I'm a Moor, some call me Saracen, some Muslim. Europe had some dark age issues, I solved them. Using Moorish science, I'm stating the obvious. Rapper drone stepped up from Kush to Mali blunts. Unawakened, unconscious, unaware Moors won't accept the fact, plus he looked up black or more. Moors the custodian of Kemetic Nubians, carrying the marvelous light, the path Negroes to Nubians, saying I'm a Moor, not colored or black. I'm a Moor, Seti or Enki, they can't change that, cause I know their hands don't extend past Allah's wisdom. I'm a Moor, no doubt a contradiction. Return to my own vine and fig tree. Nationality of mind frame, if you're with me. Reclaim your ancestral mind and shout. Get out of here, man.
I'm a Moor. Red fairs, black tats, elders of my class, not black or Indian. I repeat, I'm a Moor. Indigenous to the farthest west. Say we were great, still they say we the best. Hear what I say, I'm a Moor. Yes, it's true, if not for Drew Ali, most of y'all would have still been asleep. Now you could tell them I'm Moor than you could ever wish you thought you would be. 3 centuries deep in Moorish science, I read, study, I'm a Moor.
Rope on a peg, stuck in the shore. Oceanographic device anchored to sea floors. Goldfish of China and Japan. Veil-tailed variety brushing the cold water plants. Stretches of lands, jungles of where sand blows. Reptilian species and amphibians homes. Defending Drew Ali, that's my mission. To put securely in place or desired position. Ancestral mindset, not thinking like the hybrids. Can't hide from a 10, so they mess with the climate. Mess with the mind, mess with the food, get violent about more subjugation. Your black leaders are quiet, signed on to King Alfred, but they want you to riot. Pushing dogma as religion and want you to buy it. Most never do it, but they want you to try it. Too many have knowledge of self on the shelves and won't apply it.
I'm a Moor. Red fairs, black tats, elders of my class, not black or Indian. I repeat, I'm a Moor. Indigenous to the farthest west. Say we were great, still they say we the best. Hear what I say, I'm a Moor. Yes, it's true, if not for Drew Ali, most of y'all would have still been asleep. Now you could tell them I'm Moor than you could ever wish you thought you would be. 3 centuries deep in Moorish science, I read, study, I'm a Moor.
So I have right here in the dictionary, black Moor. Then it has the part of speech right under it. Next to it says noun. And it says a black person, man or woman, Negro. Then it has in italics, black in small case, plus then it got Moor capitalized. There's identity right there in the dictionary. It was never really hidden. You tell these people they're Moors, they say, what religion is that? They are the sorcerers did a good job. And we're battling sorcerers. Of course, if we come out talking that way from the door, you think we're out to lunch. You understand? People, it's sort of like our arrogance, our poisonous and toxic self-righteousness has cursed us for quite a few generations. We got to fix it.
Rapper Inquisition. Iron she conducted, now a secret chief. Flow Lord of Vic rappers, Mike Sharif. Got producers giving me free beats like Hanif. Cause when I flow, it's deep like a coral reef. Wash up, rapping jellyfish on the beach. Nothing to hide, show my face when I speak. Black power cartels, the black Charles Martels. Hammer the points dull, just like colors pastel. I drop it so hard that you need a hard hat. Rappers take off like Sleepy Hollow heads off on tarmac. You be black, But those whose skin is brown got their own convenience stores and temples in your town. Got politicians in their back and front pocket. Use nationality to protest so pigs can't stop it. Sorta like they can't stop the prophet. No, not Jeru, but the prophet noble true. Most say who when that name is called, but no Abraham, Isaac, Cain, and Paul. They know rappers' real names and the b-ball stats. They know cause names and religious holy cats. Claim they know it all, I see their mentals crazy. When I'm on the mic, rappers begging for the fat lady, begging for Jehovah and Slim Shady, begging for no physical but more mental slavery. Brain dead masses under mind control. Brain dead masses have lost their soul. Listening to rappers get continuous airplay. They mind control the masses, that's not hearsay. Brain dead masses are under mind control. Brain dead masses have lost their soul. Listening to rappers get continuous airplay. They mind control the masses, that's not hearsay.
You know the problem that I have with most of these cartoons is that their reality's as real as cartoons on a road trip. Wile E. Coyote's supposed to notice he can't outroad the road runner in his district. Pistols cocked back on some Wild West flick shit. Niggas in the rap game like paid parking tickets. Expiry specific, dietary plans of true greatness omitted. The bottom line ain't shifting unless the gods make that difference. Hook up like nobody's business, but our own with only our interests. Unless the interests of all is sitting on chrome, balling out of control, the big lavish homes. And hey, I ain't hating on the soul. I'm just thinking of a life where everything is whole, organically grown. Emphatically no, when asked who I want to hold for a label, report born copy my own.
Masses under mind control. Brain dead masses have lost their soul. Listening to rappers get continuous airplay. They mind control the masses, that's not hearsay. Brain dead masses are under mind control. Brain dead masses have lost their soul. Listening to rappers get continuous airplay. They mind control the masses, that's not hearsay.
The job of resurrectors is to wake up the dead on this mic in full life. Off with the head of the beast and its puppets. With love we serve justice, the first of the earth, the last to get fucked. If they corrupted, the files being purged back to basics. Withdraw from the matrix, recover what's sacred. No more colorable statuses, fiction apparatuses. I affirm and declare indigenously everywhere. Circle the seven with our own vine and fig. Ensure for the people by the people, there it is. Cleaning up the lies, 5 noble tribes, navigate with the stars. In tune with the tides, more love, more light, all law on our side for the record. The mission is to know self-perfected, corrected, gold and silver back, sword protected from the depths to the heights, be the essence, that's right.
Brain dead masses under mind control. Brain dead masses have lost their soul. Listening to rappers get continuous airplay. They mind control the masses, that's not hearsay. Brain dead masses under mind control. Brain dead masses have lost their soul. Listening to rappers get continuous airplay. They mind control the masses, that's not hearsay.
Sometimes it's good to talk, most times it's best to listen. At times are always dull, certain times it just glistens. But the mission and the test and the challenge is to overstand the difficulties of the balance. But when you try to build your palace or your temple, it's decomposing flesh. The more you don't clean the physical, the more you smell like that. Don't seek the spiritual, you're gonna get left. Certain crucial, key, vital, essential steps that have to be taken before you take your last breath. But I guess most of y'all can't be bothered. But I bet millions more will be slaughtered. Our public figures keep on out like martyrs. Too much shotters, we need more fathers to raise the daughters. Lord of mercy, to get the youth thirsty, but we still brain dead.
Brain dead masses under mind control. Brain dead masses have lost their soul. Listening to rappers get continuous airplay. They mind control the masses, that's not hearsay. Brain dead masses under mind control. Brain dead masses have lost their soul. Listening to rappers get continuous airplay. They mind control the masses, that's not hearsay. Shane Sparks and Mark Houston types got your daughters kissing their friends like entertainment dykes. LGTB and the rest of the crazies use rap and R&B to force right their babies. Fam, I used to know to sell crack the scabbies. Are now legit with businesses, not baby daddies. Codes of the street gone, everybody's got beef. Used to beef with their mom's friend's son from across the street. False flagging by the way they dress, more so fagging. Wants thing to move with the horse behind the wagon. Brown bodies, DT's bagging with the pants sagging. Claim saved in contracts with the 7-headed dragon. Looking for pardons through the officers of the courts. Moors are held at shadow inquisition forts. Some still on the ports, coking a can. Turn your pioneer to stone and your blood to sand. Brain dead masses under mind control. Brain dead masses have lost their soul. Listening to rappers get continuous airplay. They mind control the masses. That's not hearsay. Brain dead masses are under mind control. Brain dead masses have lost their soul. Listening to rappers get continuous airplay. They mind control the masses. That's not hearsay. Yeah. IHF, what up? CMP, what up? Masons think they add up with they tack down tassels. Watch me send you rope to Albion and a lasso. Caucasoid hybrid, sun burns the islands to the human fam. We created a virus, some help to build, but most destroy our future through melanin girls and melanin boys. Fast food, television, miseducation. Mr. History stole the rights from our nation. National appellation, not in all capitals. Tribes of nobles and noblesse with woven crest. Fezzes and sashes, shawls and vests. On Ashkenazi Jews, I put an alpha hex, omega the rest. Without a bloody mess, left dead in some Nikes like David Koresh. Burn out your temple with myrrh and frankincense. To work a ritual, it's all about intent and invent. Melanin, the magic dust, trust me. I shake for all the Punim while all the Rishas love me, trust me. Black candles, we got red ones too. When lit would I be fake, this is deja vu. With no Denzel, cause Washington won the Grammy. He doesn't even know Washington is his granny. Could've sniped Wesley, but went for tax evasion. Moors and courts facing these judge masons. Give back your rituals and your Babylon ways. Give back your holy books, call me rebellious slave. Give back your story, there's more truth in mine. Give back your crucifix, hanging tree boots and swine. Give back your rituals and your Babylon ways. Give back your holy books, call me rebellious slave. Give back your story, there's more truth in mine. Give back your crucifix, hanging tree boots and swine. Coming to you from the blackness in peyote teepees. Not the head wash from ice or sucking freezies. You could choose to research, don't believe me. Key of right songs cause inner visions and wonders like Stevie. Walk through the world under, your mind froze like tundra soil. Hit you like Shango when my blood's on boil. Come as Bata'Allah or Batala. With one eye for sight, I could see from afar. Mermaids and mermen cry for tadpoles and jaws. Trying to get the serious, they call it mission to Mars. To get you not looking, distract attention. Not to mention, but they have your brains in a lasso. And your pineal gland tattooed. With designs calcified, my height is amplified. To levels so deep, my flow is amphibious style. Leaving clansmen bloody in a hideous pile. Not like King Leonidas and Spartan saying 300 to caught a legion of raw. You must be fronting like European pharaohs before the 18th dynasty. Coming and killing me and saying they nasty. One golden firewall so you can't catch me. Had to jack your beat cause the shit's catchy. Sometimes a fake proves my face screw like little Scrappy. And at the piggies with the scanners trying to speed trap me. Cause I'm repping blue bloods wanna cap me. I told you, boys in blue thinking I'm a Crip soldier. Give back your rituals and your Babylon ways. Give back your holy books, call me rebellious slave. Give back your story, there's Moorish truth in mine. Give back your crucifix, hanging tree boots and swine. Give back your rituals and your Babylon ways. Give back your holy books, call me rebellious slave. Give back your story, there's Moorish truth in mine. Give back your crucifix, hanging tree boots and swine. On the real. Fake Moors know the deal. Yo, Red Kid, what up? That's how we do it. Give back the rituals and your Babylon ways. Call me rebellious slave. If you hear, get your hand on my pocket in my lecture. No El Hajj, Malik repeat, I betcha. Sergeant of the Moorish, unified front toward Islam. Twist your arm like a blunt, don't spark it. Or like Tiger Claw, debark it. Before anyone saw, not Cain, but I'm raw. Long live Iron Sheet, slaying the weak. Rhyming about rooms spinning on their Jeep. Making a mockery of the art and hard work put in by the veterans. Now they gotta work. Guru in a coma, rap heart attack. I'm sure a premier beat would bring the God back. Can't give it too much time in my rhyme, but I know mostly in rhyme they doing the crime. Build a ball court, a whack remedy. Living right around me is my worst enemy. I see that they look just like me. Award for hip hop when you're not an MC. Mastering the ceremony, very lonely. Rapping genuine, riding the beat ponies. Scrap the DJ and dancer like a phony. If you see me in some skinny jeans, you know they clone me. If you hear me rapping about crap, I'm Coke B. So do me like Big L or J and smoke me. I see some of my worst enemies live right around me and look just like me. I see some of my worst enemies live right around me and look just like me. I see some of my worst enemies live right around me and look just like me. I see some of my worst enemies live right around me and look just like me. If you hear I killed Assistant Grand Sheik, just know they're trying to get me down the Drew Ali road. Release me into the hands of Moors dirty, knowing that they conspire and wanna hurt me. Offering me dishes with glass splinters, so they'll give me a ride, leave my jacket in the winter. Try to get me through she-cast with no weakness. Don't get it twisted cause you see us speechless. I put more trust in Jupiter KTS than fake Moors with more records than JBS. Telling me they save, but just wanna be paid. Don't wanna pay dues, but be men that's made. Pushing like to travel, but don't defend. And only when backs against the wall they wanna be friend. That's why I watch no face and beg no friend, cause only Arab chambers will be there in the end. I see some of my worst enemies live right around me and look just like me. I see some of my worst enemies live right around me and look just like me. I see some of my worst enemies live right around me and look just like me. I see some of my worst enemies live right around me and look just like me. So fly, no lie, so hot, I know this. Sniff your whack lines, you're so hopeless. Clones and drones, skull and boning. Getting homes for a loan and rims chroming. Crap shooting, watermelon eating. Mad cow, bird flu, chicken stealing. Human raccoon running through daisies. Selling out your race cause you're so lazy. Think you on a level when he owns your masters. And master is holding his guard in laughter. Thinking you're balling, not me you're fooling. Armchair revolutionaries cooling. Hot like Mims, lynched from trees called Tims. Posing with your fat ass on covers of Maxim. Big fly eye shades under big brims. In some tight jeans you shouldn't wear, you're too slim. Can't stand your flow without me snoozing, drooling, falling asleep from your crooning. If I go to your show, it's me that's booing. Even if I may lay with my blood pooling. Go back to the essence with those old schooling. In the next realm I'm just keeping it moving. Don't need a whip, I'm comets, I'm cruising. I'm the spirits, you need a bottle, stay boozing. I see some of my worst enemies live right around me and look just like me. I see some of my worst enemies live right around me and look just like me. I see some of my worst enemies live right around me and look just like me. I see some of my worst enemies live right around me and look just like me. Some of my worst enemies live right around me and look just like me. I see. I see. Peace, Moors. Islam. What's good? We had to do one today. Couldn't go another day without one because you already know. You already know. Canaanland Moors not running. People go nuts, putting up all types of stuff, talking crazy. Because we know that they don't know what's going on. Everybody's assuming and not knowing, which is a big problem right now. But it is what it is. Those who know are gonna definitely know. Want to say Islam to all the Moors in the chat. Islam to the Moors in Canaanland. Islam to the Moors worldwide. Honors to the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, and give thanks to Allah for sending us a prophet. Give thanks to Allah for sending us a prophet so we could know the truth about our nationality and birthrights and not get caught up in the madness going on out here. Also, want to send a shout out to the good brother AL, as a Tachinus one, putting his L out there, not playing around with this not have a nationality BS. And peace to the brother Aboriginal Power as well. Another Aboriginal who knows that he's a Moor, not denying it, not scared, say that they're Moors and all that stuff. And Islam to everybody who knows. Of course, you already know, it's never just Cujo on here. Islam Moor. I know he's probably doing the apples or he's on mute or something. But we're going to get it in today. We have some stuff to play. We got some stuff to read. We got some book references. Little bit of everything as usual. Oh, they're obviously playing today because that's the second time they dropped them.
To avoid this message, please.
That's the second time they dropped them. So there's still this problem with our people who know, or who should know, that you can't go around claiming certain things. You can't go around claiming certain things and not realizing that you're claiming a fraud. Like it just can't be like that. There has to be some type of acknowledgement on our people's part to accept the facts that are presented. The facts that are presented, right? Now, as Moors, we already know, we don't do assumption. We don't do opinion. All we deal with is facts. All we deal with is you could go research this yourself. Like the Moors say, don't believe me. Go check it out yourself. And when you check it out yourself, you'll realize how right Moors are, how right Moors have been, and how right Moors will continue to be, because it appears like we're the only ones that have any truth out here. Everybody else is faking, telling you some BS. Islam Moor. Still playing? Oh, peace, Moor.
Peace.
I don't know if you want to start up with anything. But yeah.
Not to say, Islam to all the Moors in the chat. Give thanks for the platform, Green Sheet, because like you said, it's been 3 days. We need this day because you're missing that Canaanland Moors. Them so-called persons, stateless with no nationality, going crazy around here, just talking crazy.
As usual. Know how they do. Let me just look for something quick, fast. Like I said, we want to give a shout out to the Aboriginal and Indigenous people out there who are not afraid to acknowledge the fact that they're Moors. They're not afraid. They're not cowards. They know what's up. They know what this is. So we just want to put it out there again, in case you didn't hear. We're just going to put it out there again and get this started up.
Hey, I'll say this is what I do not agree with. All right, keep going. Oh, look at 32. What we got here on number 32? The term Moor was applied to dark-skinned, brown-skinned, and reddish-brown-skinned people. Reddish, as our good brother Chief has mentioned, and brown are the same color. All right, we got A1 and Chief back in. What's happening?
Yo, tell them,
right.
hey, Lotus.
Yeah.
Tell them, hold up, that's number what? Number 32. Read number 32 again. Read number 32 for the Aborigines that hate Ahanu the Moor, or Hanu El, or AKA a Atanchless one.
Let me hold on.
You want me to read it for you? The term,
you might do it more justice. I want to,
the term Moor was applied to any dark-skinned, brown-skinned, or reddish-brown-skinned people who were not only indigenous to Europe, but West and North Africa. It said, but Black Indians of the Western Hemisphere was dubbed with this title. So if all Moors is from North Africa, why would they dub it to people here? And just to make sure, if you study etymology, there was no fucking North Africa in 711 when you claim the Moors went into Europe. That's why I keep telling people, don't research. They get caught up in all this shit they hear other people say, and they don't do no research for themselves. And then when you hear other people say, you still want to argue it. This man wrote this book right here, damn man, Pete Canaan or whatever, you know what I'm saying? And he's a researcher. And I've been telling people this shit for years, but everybody come at me. If I say anything about anything, everybody hate, like, and that's what it is, man, because people don't research. You listen to other people and you don't research. They've been telling you it was a synonym for Negro or applied to any dark-skinned person. It ain't got nothing to do with MFTA or Drew Ali, and I've been telling people that for years.
We've been telling people that for years. When these MSTA people come out, start telling people that they're not Moorish Americans because they never been to the temple. FOH. Moors are any dark-skinned people, especially African Negroes. And you already know Negroes is not an African term. That's Latin. Negro has nothing to do with people across the Atlantic in the East. Negro is only applied to people on the West. So if Moor is any dark-skinned person, especially an African Negro, that goes to show that everybody in the world are Moors. But you see these people over here in the Western Hemisphere that call themselves all these other fictions and think that that's what their identity is as a people, especially them. The same ones that Noble Drew Ali told these people, you're not Negro, Black, colored, or Ethiopian because you're in America. Why would you be Ethiopian? Rastafarians. Why would you be Ethiopian? If Ethiopia is over there, why are you over here talking crazy? How about go back over there and talk crazy? And then they go back over there, and then they have nothing over there. Then you want to be mad and blame some European, Mussolini, what Mussolini did over here, and that's why we have nothing. No, that's not why, because you left over here. And then everybody from over there is coming over here. And they don't get that over here is really where the foundation is. And again, Moors have been telling people that. But, you know, let's go a little further. Since people want to play like they don't know what we're talking about, right? Brother's going to put out his book or whatever. 103 amazing facts about the Black Indians, telling all them Black Indians of the Western Hemisphere that they were also dubbed with the title Moor, but they don't want to be Moors. Well, let's just go further. Let's just go to Consecrated Talisman, the good brother, Prince Uriel Bey. We already know that he's living right now with us reading this. So we don't have to RIP anything because he's here right now as we're reading this. Ancient Moorish American land documents, page 208. One of the earliest Moorish, Canaanite, Phoenician documents pertaining to the right, possession, and inhabitation of land by blood in the Americas, describing the annexation of the American continent to the Iberian Peninsula, both being of the present Moorish and ancient Carthaginian Empire, is the Born Stone, B-O-U-R-N-E, Born Stone, in Kamas Kumkanit Cape Cod Bay, New England, Massachusetts. KOMASSA KUMKANIT. KOMASSA KUMKANIT. Cape Cod Bay, New England, Massachusetts, which exhibits and identifies the Moorish seal of Hanno Bay circa 500 BC, written or inscribed in the North Semitic Iberian Punic script, which is a later form of the Moabite characters, as the Moorish, Moabite, and Canaanite are known to have carried their Semitic tongue to Spain. Evidence of these ancient Moorish documents can be found in the archives of the Bourne Historical Society, Book of Ballymote, Balllymote, an archaic, rare manuscript housed in the libraries of the bishops of the Roman Catholic Church, containing priceless information on the ancient Ogham writings. Now we notice that he mentioned Phoenician and he mentioned Canaanite, but he's talking about the Americas. Why would he mention Canaanite and Phoenician when talking about the Americas? Now, again, it's not semantics if we have documented facts about it. Nobody ever came out and said Prince Uriel Bey was talking BS, burn his book. Consecrated Talisman is a classic among the Moors who are students of Moorish science, history, law, and everything else. The Consecrated Talisman is a classic amongst the Moors. And again, before you even start talking crazy, make sure you go look up semantics. Because by saying Moors are doing semantics, you're stressing the point that we're making. You're not sounding smart right now because you never looked up semantics. You just like just like AL told you, just like the Moor told you, all you people want to do is assume stuff. You don't look anything up. You don't do any research. You just want to push record, push go live, go on damn screen and talk BS instead of putting the truth out based on what you studied. Now we're going to go again because, like I said, he mentioned Canaanite and Phoenician, but he's talking about the Americas. And we want you to not debate Moors, go debate the people who Moors are presented the info. Don't debate Moors. Stop the BS. Stop talking about Moors prove this and Moors prove that. How about go find the people who put this information together in book form or whatever like that and go debate them. Get the hell out of Moors' face with your BS. So you can contact the Minnesota Historical Society. The Minnesota Historical Society. Look them up. They're going to come up. Go debate them. Don't debate Moors because this is their copyrighted information. So don't say anything about Moors. Don't bring up Moors. You go talk to them people who put this out that nobody ever refuted and said, no, those guys are wrong or whatever. And we're presenting it to you now so you can go do that. Just like the good brother Sheldon L. told these Moors who don't want to be Moors, don't argue with Moors. Go to the Moorish pharmacies in Germany and tell them, don't call your stuff Moors. Go to the beer companies in Germany that go tell them, don't call their stuff Moors. Stop using Moors as logos. Don't debate Moors. Go talk to the people who are putting it out. Go talk to the people who founded their company and called it something Moorish. Don't talk to Moors. Because trust me, we're not the ones. Minnesota Historical Society. Make sure you go look them up. When America was the land of Canaan. You guys say you're American, right? Because you're from America. Okay, so if you're American, because you're from America, and America was once the land of Canaan, what does that mean that you are? Wouldn't that mean that you're Canaanite? Oh, isn't that the same thing that Noble Drew Ali came and told these people in the 1920s? That you're descendants of Moabites and Canaanites? Or you don't want to hear what Noble Drew Ali is saying. You want to go listen to your sellout chief who did some dummy treaties calling themselves Indians and selling out all the tribes to wardship status. Selling out all the tribes. Because remember, once the chief does it, everybody else is done for. Once the chief makes the dummy treaty, everybody under the, just remember, go check all the chiefs. We check the chiefs out here in this jurisdiction called quote unquote Canada. And all the chiefs out here, they got Benzes and Beamers and cottage on the lake or whatever like that. And then when you talk to indigenous people, all of them are drunks and drug addicts and live on reserves. And the chiefs don't live there with them. They got their big house somewhere on some lake somewhere. They got waterfront property as chiefs. But the people who are the quote unquote Indians, oh, they're wards. They're such wards that even if they go to court, they got a Indian court that they're going to go to. Not much a ward that they are. And they have to go there. When America was the land of Canaan, remember, don't debate Moors. Go talk to the Minnesota Historical Society. Volumes have been written on the causes of emigration from the various countries of Europe to the United States, and it may appear superfluous to add to the numerous articles that have appeared in print. A plethora of emigration statistics is available. Monographs have appeared by the score, and it would seem that the subject has been attacked from every conceivable angle. But the historical profession still awaits the man with the magic touch, who by a process known only to the master can convert this tremendous mass of material into a masterpiece of historical synthesis. This master must sound the depths of the human soul and must analyze the noblest as well as the basest emotions that play on the human heart. He will not concern himself with the people on whom fortune has smiled graciously, nor will he relate to the exploit of the battlefield and portray the lives of the kings and the nobles. He will study the documents that portray the spirit, hopes, and aspirations of the humble folk who tilled the soil, felled the forest, and tended the loom. In short, who followed the occupations that fall to the lot of the less favored majority in every land. This paper, read on June 14th, 1929, at the first Hutchinson session of the 8th State Historical Convention, is based mainly upon documented material discovered in Sweden by author as a fellow in 1927-28 of the John Simon Gregorian Foundation of New York. America letters found their way back to the old country. These letters made a tremendous impression on certain persons at a time when a new world, a new and ideal world, was dawning in literature and in press. Into this realm of the idealists, the American letters fell like leaves from the land of Canaan. There was not only read and pondered by the simple and credulous individuals to whom they were addressed and discussed in larger groups in homes and at markets and fairs, in crowds assembled at parish churches, but they were also broadcast through the newspapers, which unwittingly or not infected. Now again, there's a lot more.
Yeah, and I just want to add on, and that's a reference point, and that's a mean reference point, because like we always say, we deal
We're dealing with the facts. You know, we're not going to go up there and just say our opinion. You know, we're going to lay the facts to the contrary. And what you just came out, that's not your opinion. That's documented facts that you just read. You know, because that'd be my main issue. They never read any documents. Never read anything with no documented facts. Never. But then you bring the proof to the contrary, and then just shuts everything down. But they'll still argue and bicker just because they like being stateless.
Yeah, they like being stateless. Oh, hold on, Moor. Somebody might be getting excited right now. Hold on. Peace. Peace.
Please stop what you're doing and listen to this very important message.
No, it's okay. There's a lot more. In the large contents of the America letters, written in the years 1840 to 1860, may be divided into two categories. One, impressions of the experiences in America, and two, comments on conditions in Sweden. With the exception of a few letters written by men of the type of Gustav Unonius, Gustaf Unonius, the great mass of them were the products of men who had only a meager education and who grow to manhood before the generation that enjoyed the advantages provided under the Act of 1842, by which every parish was required to provide a public school. The spelling is faulty to say the least, and the punctuation is atrocious. New York becomes Nef York and Nev York. Chicago, and Chicago. Illinois, Illinois. Now, there's so many reference points right now that it's just insane. Illinois. Now, don't forget, go out and take a look at RV Bay Publications and pick up the book that demystifies a lot of this Aboriginal crap that people are trying to make a lineage. Make sure you do that. Who are the Moors? Asiatics, Americans. Are you in denial of your ancestry? Part 2 by the good brother Mizraim Aleph El. And again, use your common sense. Right? Use your common sense. Illinois is really Illinois. Right here he's saying Illinois is Illinois. Elinojs. Iowa, Adiova. And Jova.
They really spelled it like that?
Yeah. Elinojs.
That's crazy.
Right? Albany, Albano, Albanes. Princeton, Princeton. Not only were liberties taken with American place names, but even many innocent Swedish words were mutilated beyond recognition. But the person who has the patience to spell his way through a mass of these documents cannot fail to acquire a profound respect for the ability of the writers to express themselves and for their sound and wholesome instincts. Right, again, going sound and wholesome instincts. Right? Once again, In conclusion, and with what has been shared and demonstratively presented, I trust this work exhibits in the spirit of refinement that Moors, Americans, Asiatics of Americas are not Negro, black, colored, or Indians. Anyone who says they don't know who Moors are, or that one cannot be a Moor unless they come through an institution, the following concluding statement quoted from Noble Drew Ali ought to sum it up. Be careful, Moors. Some of your own wearing turbans and fezzes will put you back into slavery. Don't let them do it to you. Don't let them do it to you. I beg you, don't let them put you back into slavery. Now keep in mind, this is George M. Stevenson, America as the Land of Canaan. We must not be deluded into thinking that all the earlier Swedish immigrants were saints or models of virtue, but many of their letters bear testimony to the fact that there was profound dissatisfaction with the state of religion in Sweden. The writers had listened attentively to pietistic pastors and Baptists and lay preachers with sufficient courage to violate the Conventicle Act or to incur the displeasure of the church authorities, many of whom made merry over the following bowl and served mammon rather than God. One cannot escape the conclusion that religion played a greater role in stimulating desire to emigrate than writers have hitherto suspected. And if the student of immigration wishes to understand why the Swedes in America have turned away in such numbers from the Church of the Fathers in favor of other denominations, or have held aloof from all church connections, he will find a study of religious conditions in the homeland a profitable one. It is by no means purely accidental that the beginnings of emigration coincide with the influence of various forms of dissatisfaction with the state church. Now remember, we're talking about the fact that people of the world were absolutely fed up with Christendom. People of the world were absolutely disgusted with this idea of Christendom. Why? Because they knew that was a fraud. Just like when we do our research on the whole idea of the black Madonna and child, and you see a European today, but then people are telling you that race doesn't matter. If race didn't matter, how come they're changing colors of people? If race didn't matter, how come we don't have Asiatic so-called gods and whatever, like everybody else? How come ours are looking like somebody else? Said a Swedish farmer in 1849, here in Illinois is room for the entire population of Sweden. During the present winter, I am certain that more grass has been burned than there is hay in the entire kingdom of Sweden. The grass now is just half grown, and the fields give the appearance of an ocean, with a house here and there separated by great distances. The Swede who came to the Mississippi Valley found a frontier society with many institutions in advance of those an older society, and without the multitude of officials that strutted and blustered in Sweden. In fact, as one immigrant wrote, he was hardly conscious of living under a government, and the system of taxation fooled him into thinking that there were no taxes at all. The salary of the President of the United States was a mere pittance compared with the income of the royal family, a fact not omitted in the letters. Not a few of the American letters go to extremes in setting forth contrast between poverty-ridden Sweden and the rich and mighty Republic. Here's an example. We hope and pray that the Lord may open the eyes of Svea's people, that they might see their misery, how the poor working man is despised and compelled to slave, while the so-called better classes fritter away their time in live and luxury, and live in luxury, all of which comes out of the pockets of the miserable working man. You see what happened when these so-called Indians violated the treaty? Because remember, this is talking about 1800s. How the hell is a Swede coming to the Mississippi Valley? How is a Swede in Illinois if these people didn't get help from some Indians to get to the mainland? Because any European that comes over here is supposed to be stuck to the 13 colonies. They're not supposed to be in the mainland. How'd they get there? Who violated the treaty of peace and friendship that allowed these Europeans to be all the way in Illinois from the seaboard? Remember, all those colonies that were set up by Moors was because Moors were the heirs to this vast estate. Being that they were heirs to the vast estate, they should have known about the treaty. The same way today, we should know that the Constitution for the United States of America is for Europeans. That's not for indigenous people. That's not for anybody but foreigners who come here. That's their supreme law of the land. Our supreme law of the land is universal law. Their supreme law of the land is Constitution. Our supreme law of the land is Zodiac Constitution. Their supreme law of the land is paper. Our supreme law of the land is stars. Their supreme law of the land is sword and pen. As soon as they switch the stuff, because remember, all these people who came over here, we already know that when they came over here, they went to the longhouses, and then the so-called Iroquois taught them how to run government and stuff like that, and taught them how to do whatever, when they were supposed to not teach them anything. They already learned everything they're supposed to learn from the Moors in Europe. They already learned everything that they knew when they raped and pillaged Moorish people in the Granada. When they expelled the Moors, just go research the Spanish Inquisition and find out how much information these people got from the Moors. The information that they got from the Moors was supposed to limit them to the seaboard. The fact that they got into the mainland, we have to ask who let them on the mainland. And again, just like I told you, Moors, your own, wearing turbans and fezzes, are going to put you right back into slavery. Your own are going to put you back into slavery. Don't worry about some Europeans. They're only following what they see Moors doing to each other. They're only following what they see Moors doing to each other. Not what Moors are doing to Indians, not what Moors are doing to Aboriginals, not what Moors are doing to autochthonous or Moors are doing to indigenous. No, what Moors are doing to each other. Because all these so-called dark-skinned people over here are Moors. Some of them sold you out. Some of them said, forget the Sultan. Forget treaty of peace and friendship. We're going to make our own treaties with these Europeans. And then they got syphilis blankets and all that stuff, and now they're complaining. Why are you complaining? If you would have followed the treaty, you would have known these people were coming with the syphilis blankets. These people were coming with the smallpox. But nah, you want to bring them into your stuff, show them how to fish, show them how to do all this stuff. They can fish in the Atlantic Ocean. Why they need to be on river fishing when, because like we learned, these people thought that these Europeans coming were the return of Quetzalcoatl, their white savior. Not knowing that white is a status, not skin complexion, which again goes back to the fact that these people obviously didn't even understand their own ancient forefather stuff, because their own ancient forefather stuff told them, watch out for the red man. And then now these people are calling themselves red, and European has all the land. You think that wasn't transfer of ownership? You think that wasn't because of your sellout chiefs who really were sachems, and then they sold out? That's why they're chiefs today. How come they're not sachems anymore? How come they're not sheiks anymore? How come they're not nobles? Oh, but quickly they became noble savages. Why? Because they're the ones without God. They don't know God. They don't know what God is. God is the word, not some being in the sky or whatever. But hey, if you don't know God, then you're going to sit there, call yourself Indian, and think that you're talking about indigenous people. Islam more.
Islam.
If you got anything to throw in there.
If I could need something to add on. Let's say. All right. You can hear me?
Yeah, Moore, we got you.
Okay. This is coming out of the book Keywords for American Culture Studies by edited by Bruce Burgett and Glenn Henley. Indian, Robert Warrior. Indian is a term that has deep and conflicting roots in the history of the Western Hemisphere and in the contemporary imaginations and attitudes of those who live in the Americas. The issue of the proper usage of this term and others related to it, Native American, American Indian, Amerindian, Native, Indigenous, and First Nations, among others, can be frustrating since the question is so basic, that is, it does little to open up the depths of historical or contemporary indigenous expressions. But it is also a way of beginning a discussion of what students and practitioners of American culture studies ought to be learning and researching about the Aboriginal history of the Americas. Broad agreement exists that the term Indian, referring to people in America, originated in Christopher Columbus' mistaken idea that he had discovered a new route to India when he arrived in this hemisphere. Since Columbus' eras of navigation and nomenclature, various variations on this term have been used diversively, as in bastardized form Indian, or in its contemporary use in Mexico and other places south of the United States, to describe people thought of as poor, backwards, and racially disadvantaged. In light of this, most scholars in Native American studies and many Native peoples themselves advise against the use of the term Indian. So they themselves, the so-called Indian people themselves, don't even like the term Indian.
But these fakers who are Moors that want to be everything except Moors are going to embrace that they're Indians. And then tell other people that they're faking to be Indians, when the real fakers are the ones who don't want to be Moors or don't want to be the return of the ancient Moabites and Canaanites, right? Like the Swedes found out when they came over here. Not only that, but their letters remain to record the fact that in America, they found a society that nearly approached their conception of an ideal state. This explains why students of immigration agree almost unanimously that the Swedes assimilated more rapidly and thoroughly than any other immigrant stock. After all, why should anyone be hesitant about taking out naturalization papers in the land of Canaan? Some letters written by men who had scarcely time enough to unpack their trunks read like 4th of July orations. As a son of the great republic, which extends from ocean to ocean, I will strive to honor my new fatherland. A limitless field is open for the development of Swedish culture and activity. Destiny seems to have showered its blessings on the people of the United States beyond those of any other nation in the world. The Sweden of 1840 to 1860 is no more, and the America of Abraham Lincoln belongs to the ages. But for hundreds of thousands of people in the land of the midnight sun, America, in spite of the geographical distance, lies closer to them than their neighboring province. In some parts of Sweden, the American letters from near relatives brought Chicago closer to them than Stockholm. They knew more about the doings of their relatives in Center City, Minnesota, than about Uncle John in John Copping. In deciphering an American letter, the historian is prone to forget the anxious mother who for months, perhaps years, had longed for it, and the letter that never came is entirely missing from the archives and newspaper columns. But if he turns the musty pages of the Swedish American newspapers, his eyes will fall on many advertisements similar to the following. Our dear son, Johan Anton Peterson, went to America last spring. We have not heard a line from him. If he sees this advertisement, will he please write to his people in Sweden? We implore him not to forget his aged parents, above all, not to forget the Lord. In many letters were stained with tears in the little rot cottages in Sweden. There were not a few written by trembling hands in the log cabins of Minnesota, and later in the sod houses of Nebraska. Sometimes, the heart was too full to allow the unsteady hand to be the only evidence of longing for parents and brothers and sisters, as the following quotation reveals. I will not write at length this time. Nothing of importance has happened, and if you come, we can converse. God alone knows whether that day will ever dawn. My eyes are dimmed with tears as I write about it. What a happy day it would be if, contrary to all expectations, we children could see our parents. Miraculous things happened in the land of Canaan. It could transform a conservative Swedish into 100% American in spirit, but could not so easily sever the ties of blood. Neither could the storm-tossed Atlantic prevent sisters, cousins, uncles, and aunts from accepting invitations embalming in American letters to attend family reunions in the land of Canaan. These are Swedes talking now. Why would they relate over here to Canaan? Why would some Swedes? Why would some Swedes leave Sweden, come over here and say, "Oh wow, we're in the land of Canaan"? Why would some slaves who were really prisoners of war say, "Hey, in order to get out of slavery, all we have to do is go north to Canaan"? You think it wasn't That's why there was a reconstruction of history. That's why there was a reconstruction of history. And again, for the more who ask the question, what's Alabama's Moorish name? That's it. Alabama. Alabama's Moorish name is Alabama.
The prefix Al is Arabic.
Right? And there it is in the book. Directory of Aboriginal Appellations, Attitudes of the Land. Again, you can get it on rvbpublications.com. Who are the Moors, Asiatics, Americans? Are you in denial of your ancestry? Part 2 by the good brother Mizraim Aleph El. Since you guys are playing around. Alabama. Asiatic appellation meaning here we rest. Reference. Webster's Unabridged Dictionary, 1936. Addenda to a dictionary of the English language. Alaska, from the Asiatic appellation Alaxa, the most extreme west. Arizona, the Papago Asiatic word meaning place of little springs, also called the Copper State. Arkansas, from Ark-a-bo prefix to Kansas. Ark-a-bo prefix to Kansas. And you know, only bows and arrows and stuff are what? That's Moorish weaponry. That's not some Indian stuff. California, the Golden State, derived from Spanish Romance Island. Also see the story of Khalifa. Colorado, the Centennial State, from the Spanish red or colored. Connecticut, Asiatic appellation Connecticut, Q-U-O-N-E-K-T-A-C-U-T, meaning Long River. Connecticut. Delaware, quasi-national domicile named after De La Warr, governor of quasi-national Virginia. Florida, land of flowers. And we're not going to spoil it. Go get the book and go learn something. Because clearly people are in denial of their ancestry. Now we'll go back to consecrated talisman. This celebrated book was assembled about 800 years ago from a collection of miscellaneous manuscripts. The last manuscript including the codex called the Ogam Tract, O-G-A-M Tract, which deals with 70 varieties of ancient Moabite Iberian script, collectively called again Ogam, meaning grooved writing, a cuneiform. More specifically, the 502 folio vellum leafskin page book of Ballymote is housed in the library of the Irish Academy in Dublin. A Harvard professor and epigrapher, Barry Fell, stumbled upon explanations in Gaelic of the ancient Moorish, Moabite, Canaanite alphabets of America, which again was Moabite Phoenician, Iberian, in a book compiled by a bishop of Kildare called Finn Mac Gorman, F-I-N-N-M-A-C.
Come on, Great Sheep.
Yo, boy.
You got to read that whole thing all over again. That was crazy. Come on, man.
A Harvard professor.
That whole part. Yes, please.
A Harvard professor and epigrapher, Barry Fell. Everybody knows Barry Fell. This is not some nobody. Barry Fell stumbled upon explanations in Gaelic of the ancient Moorish, Moabite, Canaanite alphabets of America, which again was the Moabite, Phoenician, Iberian, in a book compiled by a bishop of Kildare, a bishop of Kildare, called Finn Mac Gorman, FINNMACGORMAN, who died in 1160. His compilation is called by scholars the Book of Leinster, Leinster, the Book of Leinster, housed in the library of the University of Dublin, founded by Queen Elizabeth I in 1591, under the name of College of the Holy and Undivided Trinity. Subsequent ancient Moorish American documents were recorded in Pennsylvania. Moors from the west of the Pyrenees established the cities of Pennsylvania, including prehistoric Philadelphia. These deeds are confirmed in the legal documents titled Susquehanna, Pennsylvania. So there's another one for you. Aboriginal name of Pennsylvania, Susquehanna, Susquehanna, Pennsylvania stones, also written in Moorish, Iberian, Punic, matching the Moorish Phoenician inscriptions from Sardinia and the Moorish Ogham on the stone buildings of New England. This group of Moors, as distinguished from, for example,
What's the name of those buildings in New England?
the Moorish Ogham on the stone buildings of New England.
Stone buildings.
Yeah,
of
so
New England.
so
All right,
the
get
deeds,
that.
yeah,
Yep.
the deeds are confirmed in the legal documents, titles Susquehanna stones. Titles Susquehanna stones, also written in the Moorish Iberian Punic, matching the Moorish Phoenician inscriptions from Sardinia and the Moorish Ogham on the stone buildings of New England. This group of Moors, as distinguished from, for example, Moorish Wabanaki tribe of New England, entered the Mississippi from the Gulf of Mexico, penetrating inland to Iowa, to the Dakotas, and westward along the Arkansas and Cimarron rivers, to leave behind inscribed records of their presence. Other Moorish tribes from Iberia reached the Gulf of St. Lawrence, introducing various Moorish Latin navigational terms into the language of Moorish tribes known as Algonquins. Algonquins, right? Algonquins. Al is Arabic, Gonquins. Their descendants employ dialects in part from ancient Moabite tongues of Phoenicia, Maurutia, Morocanum, Libya, Utica, Sidon, Tyre, Carthage, etc. Moorish seamen, along with many Moors from Persia, today inaccurately called Persians, lived near the mouths of rivers of New England, as at North Salem, on a branch of the Merriam River in southern New Hampshire. Moorish seamen, along with many Moors from Persia, today inaccurately called Persians, live near the mouths of rivers of New England, as at North Salem, on a branch of the Merriam River in southern New Hampshire. Now again, let's just qualify what the brother is talking about with North Salem being Salem. North Salem being Salem.
Yeah, that's Salem, Massachusetts. That's right around the corner.
Yep.
From where I'm at.
More Salam in Salem. Right? And then remember civic lesson number 2. Civic lesson number 2. Page 27. Civic lesson number 2. Page 27. And don't forget, 40 of you people in there sneak study, and make sure you hit the like, the thumbs up stuff. The traditionally accepted burnings, lynchings, and drownings of the witches of Salem in Massachusetts by the Christian Pilgrim Inquisitionists spread over most of North America. It was a common religious ritual and practice to murder well over 100 women a day. This is for all the mothers out there, all the witches, all the mothers that are witches. You got your crystals and your stones and your candles, and you know your astrology, and you're doing natal charts and all that stuff for people, and you got your tarot cards and all that stuff. This is for you, so you can recognize your power. That these pilgrims came here with the assistance of the fake Indians, because remember, the job of the sons is to protect mother. How these people get to kill 100 mothers a day? Where are the sons at? Don't tell me that they were out in the war fighting some BS, because they don't need. Again, we're talking about how these people got into the mainland, how these pilgrims get from the seaboard to the mainland if they didn't have help from your own who sold you out. And mother messaged me today about her own selling her out. Her own selling her out. Not some European, her own selling her out. Why? Because she's talking about she's Moor, and they don't want to hear none of that because they're black, and we can't do nothing together because we're black people, and if you don't want to be black, then we don't want nothing to do with you, and all this BS. These mass murders. Huh?
That's what they told her.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man. European didn't tell her that.
Her own. These mass murders and burnings of indigenous Moorish women by the Christian peregrines were ritualistic celebrations with song and food. The pilgrims would often cut an ear, finger, or toe from the bodies of the condemned women as souvenirs. The pilgrims would often cut an ear, finger, or toe from the bodies of the condemned women as souvenirs. Right? So when you go to people's house and you see them with stuffed animals and stuff like that, know that they got that from them decapitating your ancestors. It wasn't a bear head that used to be on the wall at first. Keep in mind, it wasn't a stuffed fox that they would have on the table to show that they're a good hunter and all that stuff. In the indigenous Moabite Moorish culture, the women historically possessed the wealth of the family. The gold, silver, and jewels of the Moorish tribes were commonly worn as intricate and elaborate jewelry, adorning their hair, turbans, khimars, and bodies of the Moabite women. In ancient culture, the family line was and is maintained and carried by and through the women. The land and the wealth of the families were always passed from generation to generation through the highly cultured feminine gender woman. The slaughtering of the so-called witches of Salem in the Americas was in truth a concocted religious rationale for stealing the gold, silver, jewelry, and robbing the Moorish women, the tribes, and the families of their lands. This is one of the reasons the Dutch masters joined. This is one of the reasons why the Dutch masters coined the words Negro, Black, Coloreds, Indian, Spaniards, etc., and used these appellations to separate the Moors from the land. The Christian pilgrims were more wicked, debased, and ruthless than any of the helpless women they murdered for their land and precious jewelry. The witches of Salem, in the true hidden history, is referred to the women of Salem, the Moabite Moorish indigenous women, falsely called Indians. The witches of Salem, in the true hidden history, is referring to the witches of Salem, the Moabite Moorish indigenous women falsely called Indians. Their high culture and civilization was built on the divine laws of nature, geometry, the zodiac, astrology, alchemy, the number 0 to 9, and the elevated operative knowledge of the electromagnetic color spectrum and its functional applicable uses. The witches of Salem, in the true hidden history, is referring to the woman of Salem. Right? Salem, that's not Indian. Salem is definitely not some Indian stuff. So obviously, the witches that they're talking about weren't Indians if they're from Salem.
Nope.
Use your common sense. If the witches were from Salem, then they weren't Indians. There's no way that they're Indians, because Salem's not Indian. Their high culture and civilization was built on the divine laws of nature, geometry, zodiac astrology, alchemy, the numbers 0 to 9, and the elevated operative knowledge of the electromagnetic color spectrum and its functional applicable uses. These combined sciences of the ancient ones is known as the Creed of Islam, or Moabite Moorish science. The Europeans call these sciences demonology. Salem is derived from salam. Salam, salamu, means peace. Pilgrims burned, lynched, raped, drowned, and quartered the women of peace. The intent was to rob, kill, or enslave the indigenous peoples, destroying their civilization and stealing their lands. If you don't know, make sure you go look up quartered so you know what they were doing to your ancestors. Don't worry about burned, lynched, raped, drowned. Just go look up quartered so you could know that that's what they did to your ancestors. Which is why we're in the situation that we're in today. Because of the work that these people did in order to get us to be in this position that we're in right now. And then can't figure this stuff out. Because again, like we were told, your own wearing turbans and fezzes, calling themselves Indian, is out here selling you out. Right. Yeah, so we just let salam, let's just go back to the consecrated talisman. Next, we have the Moorish, Moabite, American, Iberian, Punic, Semitic tongue of Carthage inscribed on the ancient Moabite American document from circa 800 to 200 BC called the Grave Creek, West Virginia tablet. The Grave Creek, West Virginia tablet. The tablet was found in 1838 at the depth of a 60-foot in a large burial mound at Grave Creek, West Virginia. In Hijacked central Vermont, there is a Moorish.
Real quick,
Yeah,
Mo.
Go ahead, Mo. Take your
That
time.
area right there you just said, with West Virginia, the creek of West Virginia, that was originally known as Tangier, Virginia. It was they say it was established in 1608, a year after Virginia was found. But that area you just said, Creek, West Virginia, that's really Tangier. You can Google it right now.
Yeah,
Type it in, Tangier, Virginia.
just Google it. Just Google it. See what comes up. Just Google Tangier, Virginia. Just Google Tangier, Virginia. And then ask yourself, why are they calling it Tangier, Virginia? I thought Tangier is over there. Why is Tangier over here? Why is Moorish essence in Pensacola, Florida?
Right.
Why? What? How come? There's Moorish essence of Pensacola, Florida? These people knew that this was the farthest west. They knew. How they know? Because Spanish Inquisition. You put a Moor in some torture device, and you're probably going to get some information that you never had before. The tablet was found in 1838 at the depth of 60 feet in a large burial mound at Grave Creek, West Virginia. In Apuxet, central Vermont, there is a Moorish temple dedications on Canaanite steles. Here in North America, examples of edge ogam of the Susquehanna Valley reads from top to bottom in ancient vowel style. This is translated as Tubal, son of Ibagug. Tubal, son of Ibagug, Iabagug, or Habakkuk, a Moorish prophet of the Old Testament. This is a Moorish Iberian Punic community whose Moabite Semitic name occurs, and the Ogam Moorish Iberian Punic script is employed. The name of the god, Bel, Baal, or Balath, a common or general term for ancient Moorish gods and goddesses of the Canaanites, Phoenicians, and Arameans, and others. And again, you can see that what the Moor is doing is like what we tell these people. What the Moor is doing is that he's putting Moorish in front of everything. Moorish in front of Moabite, Moorish in front of Canaanite, Moorish in front of Phoenicia, Moorish in front of Semitic, Moorish in front of America, Moorish in front of whatever. Because ultimately, that's how they were able to take everything. By getting us to be things and call things things that they're not. And as soon as we start calling it things that they don't have jurisdiction over, or as soon as we call it things that they have jurisdiction over, you lose it. Now, let's just put this out there again for those who don't know. Los Indios, a Native American War Manual. Ricardo Ignacio, page 227. I studied history to understand why Europeans came to the Americas in the first place. which eventually led me to study European history. I wanted to comprehend who they were, why they came, what they wanted, and what they planned to do in the land of my people. I educated myself, and all my research guided my decision to write this note. I believe that writing about the past is worthless unless the written piece contains lessons learned from the mistakes of both the conquerors and the conquered, so that future generations won't repeat this sickening history. This is my reason for writing this letter, which I have entitled Los Sin Dios. Why that title? Los Sin Dios literally translates to those without God, or the godless, which is how Columbus labeled the indigenous people. Los Sin Dios literally translates to those without God, or the godless, which is how Columbus labeled the indigenous people.
Can we go over that real quick? Islam, Rashi.
Islam.
No, just real quick, because people got to realize now, when Columbus landed here, like you said, he wasn't, Indian is an English word. So Columbus wasn't speaking English. So Indian, when he saw whatever was going on, that term did not come out his mouth. Indian. Because he didn't speak that language. That's English. That's the English term. Indian is an English term. He didn't speak English. And that's my other thing too. How can you be Indian when Indian is an English word? That's English. It's English. If you want to go back, it's to Indios or whatever. That's Latin.
Well, and then that was the play too. The play is that they're saying Indios. It's not Indios. It's Los Indios.
Right.
There's no Indios. There's no such thing as Indios. People came over here and they saw Indios. No, they saw Los Indios. But these people tell you anything in order to get their little story in there to make you think that they're onto something when they're onto nothing. These people are doing the same thing that the colonized did. Columbus never planned to travel to India, which at the time wasn't even known as India, but as Bharatha Varsha. It didn't become India until the British colonized it in the 1700s. Therefore, it is not possible that Columbus was searching for an India that didn't exist yet. After Columbus arrived in the Americas, the indigenous inhabitants became known in Spanish as Los Indios, the implication being that they didn't believe in the Christian God. Europeans felt they had permission from their God to conquer any tribe, village, or people as long as it was done in the name of Christ. It was important for me to use this terminology as the title of my note because many Native Americans today use the term Indians or Indios to identify themselves. Los Indios eventually became Indios over time. Los Indios eventually became Indios over time. Los Indios became Indios. Indios became Indian. So anybody who's telling you that they're Indian today, Los Indios eventually became Indios. So when you hear them talk about we are Indios, yeah, don't debate me. You can go look them up. Ricardo Ignacio. You can go look him up. If you want to debate something, go talk to Ricardo. Don't talk to Canaanland Moors.
Right.
Go debate Ricardo. Prove your claim to him. Don't try to prove nothing to us. Because we already know what's up. We got nationality. We're not the ones out here stateless, playing around like we don't know ourselves. We know ourselves very well. We know ourselves extremely well. And going back to Baal, which is Canaanite, right? The name of the god Baal appears in the Ogam of the Moorish Iberian script in the lintels of temples dedicated to the sun. BL, dedicated to Baal or Bel. The same inscription with a solar symbol incorporated in the L from the equinoctial temple above South Royalton, Vermont, North America. Right? Remember Baal. Okay? God El. Classification of the codical gods is one of the major pre-Spanish Mayan deities, specifically associated with trade. Who are the ones that were doing trade and rulers of commerce and all that stuff? The Moors, right? Oh, the Moors are known as El and Bay and Day and Al and Ali. But pre-Spanish Mayan deity was God El. And then there's God M. But then the Delawares had M on their stuff to say that it was Moor. So if they got M on their stuff as what their citizenship, oh yeah, they're M. What's M? M means Moor. Then God M, there's no God N, and they go through the whole stuff because they can't pronounce these names because they don't have the melanin spirit to be able to pronounce Aboriginal and Indigenous words. So they make up stuff to the best of their ability. Just like the Swedes, they don't know whatever, but over here must be Canaan. They're familiar, they know what that is. Then they came over here and related over here to Canaan. Nowhere else. Why? They're bored. They don't know what they don't know anything else to do. Right, it goes on and on and on. We're not done. New Mexicans portray Moors in the outdoor drama Los Moros y Cristianos on the University of New Mexico campus in 1999. The Islamic invasion of Spain and the subsequent reconquest left a deep imprint on the Spanish mind and culture. The first conquistadors in the New World were instructed by the Spanish king to keep a lookout for the mosques and the Muslim priests. First conquistadors. The first conquistadors? So hold on a sec. So the first conquistadors came over here. They didn't tell these guys look out for teepees or whatever. They told them look out for Muslim priests and mosques. Why are they looking out for mosques when they came here? What did they know? What did they find out? For them to say, hey, let's go over to this land over here. But when you get there, look out for mosques. What do they know? Obviously, they knew that the people over here were Islamic. And if they were Islamic, more than likely they were Moors. 99.99999%, it's a possibility that the people here were Moors if there were mosques here. Because remember, the term Muslim is modern. There's no Muslim priests. In 1500s, trust me, there was no Muslim priests. Anybody Islamic was classified as Muslim. So Noble Drew Ali made reference to Muslim and said that all these people, matter of fact, since he's talking, might as well get that, put him out there. Might as well put him out there.
And just to back you though, with the Muslim being modern, in the book, Secret, I think it's like the secret connection between Queen Elizabeth and the Sultan of Islam by Jerry Broughton. The author's name is Jerry Broughton. He tells you in that book that the term Muslim is a modern term, that they use ancient terms like Moor. Before Muslim, in the book, The Secret Connection Between Queen Elizabeth and the Sultan of Islam by Jerry Broughton, he tells you that they use the ancient term Moors before the 1500s.
Might as well read that. You might as well read that one more time, because we want the so-called, we don't care about the haters who are after this. They're gonna make a video talking BS about we're not Moors and all that stuff. We want the people like Aboriginal Power, people like Autochthonous L, and those Moors who also call themselves Indians to gravitate to the fact that you're Moors. We don't worry about the people who are the dirties. The dirties are going to do what they do. They're going to stay doing what they do, which is cause confusion. But the ones who have their wiring in their mind connected properly, and you might have, some disconnected neural pathways, so you're not getting it really, but the spirit is going to make sure that you get it once you hear the right thing. That's why we put out so much info. We don't just put out one book during class or whatever. These people took the 103 stuff and they're reading all this stuff that is just causing confusion. But they never went through that section 32 over and over and over again to let the people know who are calling themselves Indian and brown and red and black and whatever that, oh yeah, Moor was also used to identify all those brown, black, yellow, orange people that are called themselves Indians. They didn't go over that a few times. They skipped over that quick fast. Matter of fact, they didn't even want to read it. They made Autochthonous L read it. They didn't even want to read it because they knew it was damaging to their career. They knew it was damaging to their career. We're not saying that we're not Indians like that. Of course, we're the Indians. Of course, we're the Africans. Of course, we're all that stuff. Because there's nobody else on the planet to be those stuff. We're the only ones that could be those stuff. But all those things are misnomers. Who are you really? What's your true identity? What's your true identity? The true identity is that we're Moors. People could accept it or not. That's up to them. We personally don't care whether you accept it or not, because we know we got ours. I can call Brother Yusuf. He got his nationality. Well, all these Moors on here. Anybody more got their nationality on there? Push one. These be ones all across the board. Because they proclaimed who they are. They know who they are. So we're not even trying to get people to do whatever. God, Allah, Yahweh, whatever, only helps those that help themselves. If you don't want to help yourself and get out of this mess, then ain't no help coming. You might as well be these people's nigger. Again, going back to the Muslim. This is Noble Drew Ali, the divine origin of the Asiatic nations. The fallen sons and daughters of the Asiatic nation of North America need to learn to love instead of hate, and to know of his higher self and lower self. This is the uniting of the Holy Quran of Mecca for teaching and instructing all Moorish Americans, etc. The key of civilization was and is in the hands of the Asiatic nations, the Moorish, who were the ancient Moabites and the founders of the holy city of Mecca, the Egyptians, who were the Hammatites and a direct descendant of Mizraim, the Arabians, the seed of Hagar, Japanese and Chinese, the Hindus of India, the descendants of the ancient Canaanites, Hittites, and Moabites from the land of Canaan, the Asiatic nations and countries in North, South, and Central America, the Moorish Americans and Mexicans in North America, Brazilians, Argentinians, Chileans in South America, Colombians, Nicaraguans, and the natives of San Salvador in Central America. All of these are Muslims. All of these are Muslims. Going back again. The first conquistadors in the New World were instructed by the Spanish king, to keep a lookout for mosques and Muslim priests. When Cortes conquered the Aztecs, he reported to his sovereign in Spain, "We discovered many mosques," which they have in these parts. What are Aztecs doing with mosques? Why do Aztecs have mosques if they were Muslims? If they weren't Muslims, why did they have mosques?
Yep. And I'm gonna steal this one from Autochthonous. Why won't they classify the Aztec or the Mayans as Indians? I said, oh, that is
a good
different.
question.
They never do classify them as Indians. They may give them other myths because they know that term Indian doesn't go past the year 1492. That's when that whole whatever came about. Around that time. That's not an ancient term. There's no ancient Indians. Your ancestors never even heard of that word. They probably heard the degrading Los Indios when they got here saying that. But they never Indian. No, never heard of that.
I don't know what that is. No idea what that is.
And then these people who are labeling themselves Indian, indigenous, all these adjectives that lead to statelessness, they killing themselves and then get upset about it.
Yeah.
Like saying crazy stuff, talking about, we need to wipe the Moors out. And I'm like, are y'all serious? Like, y'all know, like, I think y'all playing. Like, because y'all really know y'all Moors. Like, I just think y'all just be playing because y'all want to get views. But to say, oh, let's just wipe out the Moors, yeah, brother, like, you would really say all of that for some likes?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Like,
for some
I'm
subscribers, yeah, for some subscribers and likes and thumbs up, talking BS.
Like, you want somebody to walk around, harm my 11-year-old son because he got his fez on. You talking about wipe him out? What are you talking about? Like, that's what I got from that when he said that in his video. We're gonna wipe these Moors out. I'm like, Bill used to walk around with his fez on, and I see somebody that look like me, that's a Moor, bothering my son because he's being who he's supposed to be, and you over there trying to tell, oh, I'm gonna wipe you out because Indian Council guy said we gotta wipe out the Moors. Like, look at that. Look at that. Fraud. To cause confusion for likes.
Yep.
For likes, because there ain't nothing else they getting. They're not getting nothing else. They doing the look at me. I'm the one. And that's that Indian Council guy, man. Be talking crazy on his channel. Crazy, because he knows, like, he can just lie and get away with it.
Yeah,
like, he can just press play, record. Nobody can say nothing to me, you know. And then I sit there and I listen to him. I'm like, he get huffy, he gets big chested in the room by himself. Yeah. I'm like, I never even seen that. Like, usually something has to hit me like that.
he gets himself like that. I'm like, yo, I've never seen that. How you get yourself riled up? Like, you got real angry for stuff that you did. Ain't nobody even around you. You mad. Because Moors is that information. Every time you try to type in something, do some research, to try to go against the Moors or to expose the Moors, all you finding is more Moors. That's all you're going to find. Even I type in stuff to try to find out we're not Moors. Like, show me. Like, I try to go see and see what other people are saying how we're not Moors. And 9 out of 10 times, it just be black people, so-called black people saying we're not Moors.
Yeah.
That's all I found. Never found the Europeans saying it. Never found no other nation in the world saying we're not Moors. Just so-called blacks who are stateless and Indians who are stateless. According to international law, you can Google Indian tribe on Cornell University or Cornell Law or whatever. They give you I sent you the picture of it. They gave you the definition of the whole thing.
Yeah.
It says a village corporation. I said, look at that.
Village corporation.
A village corporation. That's what the Indian tribe is.
A village corporation.
According to Cornell law. And I'm like, yo, look at that.
A village corporation.
But the sneaky stuff that they're doing is once we tell them, oh, this is what the definition of Indian means, they'll say, oh, that's the colonizer, or that's what these people are saying the word Indian means. Like, well, what y'all saying the word Indian mean? Where y'all get that from? Where y'all getting that from? I can't even. I've never even read that. Never even read what y'all saying.
Straight.
Never even read it. Never. Like, the whole world knows the Indian, you being called an Indian here, is a misnomer. The whole world knows that. Children know that. They teach that in school. They teach that.
I don't know if you watch it. Just to back you up, the more in the chat backing you up, said that in Japan, people call copper tone people kokube.
Oh, man.
What more you want that we're Moors? You want more than that? You want more than that?
Yo, the 1621
Come on,
thing.
yo. You want more than that? Hey, well, before even 1621, watch this one. The first explorers and colonists, oh yeah, and this is from the article, Traces of Moorish Influence on Spain Survive in New Mexico. Traces of Moorish influence, not Indian influence, traces of Moorish influence on Spain survive in New Mexico. The first explorers and colonists on the upper Rio Grande drew a parallel between their own experiences and the crusading efforts of their grandfathers in Spain. The Pueblos here, like the Moors, were non-Christian, that is, infidels. The Hispanic settlers therefore tended to note the similarities between Indians and Muslims. For instance, they said some of the Native Americans shoot arrows from bows that look like those of the Moors. Others painted their chins in the fashion of Moorish women. Pedro de Cantaneda, traveling with Coronado in 1540, described the Apaches on New Mexico's eastern plains, declaring, "They go about like the Arabs, with their tents and troops of dogs which carry Moorish pack saddles with girths." In August 1680, Captain Pedro de Leyva at El Paso received word of the bloody Pueblo revolt upriver. He sent word to the viceroy in New Mexico City, saying, "We have determined, few as we are, to attempt to liberate Upper New Mexico as those of Covadonga against the Moorish dogs." Memory of the Battle of Covadonga even to this date, could still fire the Spanish soul. The drama included much dialogue between Christian and Moorish leaders and abundant clanging of arms during the battle scenes. At present, it takes a trained eye and ear to recognize Moorish survivals in contemporary New Mexican culture. They include Hispanicized words from Arabic like alfalfa, adobe, aquina, alcalde, zaguan, and alcohol. Also, architectural details and decoration in the style of the Moors. I don't know what more y'all want than this. I know, oh yeah, just to put this out too, because they like to say that all the Moors do is deal with semantics. Etymonline.com. Semantics. Noun. The science of meaning in language. So yes, all Moors deal with is semantics. That's all that it's about.
See that? You see how that works? When you looked up the word, now they can't play victim role or another excuse for what Moors are doing because you looked up the word. Like that's why I always be saying, if you knew what the word meant, 9 out of 10 times it wouldn't even be an argument. You just don't even know what the word means, and they be in it, and it's just because they want to be everything else but Moors. But they know they're Moors. These people know they're Moors.
Yep.
Because everything that they saying, being Aboriginal, indigenous to the land, none of them were saying this stuff until Canaanland Moors, Harvey Bay Publications, Hakeem Bey, Taj Tariq Bey, and all of the other Moors that came before us laid the platform down. Like if y'all didn't teach that we were the Aboriginal indigenous people of the land, that we were the so-called Indians, we are the so-called indigenous, if y'all didn't teach that first, they wouldn't even have had a foundation to stand on to be able to call themselves Indians or nothing like that, because the foundation came from Harvey Bay Publication or Hakeem Bey or ETC.
Mm-hmm.
Or it doesn't, because the Native American indigenous groups don't push this. They don't push that we are that. They don't, because when you go look up who they are, it's a bunch of pale European people. Why would they come and tell our people that we are the indigenous people? Only people who said that was the Moors. And then they took it, got an attitude, and said, not even got an attitude, they took the information, made it to where it benefits them, and now you got to look at me. Because that's what the whole thing is about. Like when you go look at these people, they steal people's information that they got from them, and then go on their same platform and diss them in their same video.
Yep.
Like they'll throw them under. And I'm like, how could he throw them? That whole platform is from Moors, and you're just throwing us all of us under the bus. Like that's crazy. And the other thing is too, which is important to me, a lot of these so-called Aboriginal indigenous groups, they have Europeans in their stuff debating with Moors and coming at Moors, but you got Europeans in your stuff. Like y'all need to check that. Like don't have people that aren't who we are, same bloodline, and then because they're disagreeing with Moors, you're gonna let them go in there and talk.
Right.
You know that Cameroon guy, that's suspect. That Lotus guy, that's suspect.
Oh yeah, somebody brought
people's moms.
Somebody showed the video. Somebody showed the video, the music video. Mayo had some music video or whatever, and clearly, he's amalgamated. He's not no pure blood. But again, they let these people, because they already know about What was Horace Butler calling it again? The science of fascination. That our people are fascinated with stuff that have nothing to do with them. The science of fascination. That our people want the top line Gucci bag. They want the newest shoe. They want everything that has absolutely nothing to do with them. Just like they want the learning from people who have absolutely nothing to do with them. Because they want to be able to say, what did he say? They want to be able to say they're the first ones that went to the whatever, even though the whatever was some BS. They still want to be the first ones who did it. Right? Sultanate of Tenochtitlan. Sultanate of Tenochtitlan. World of Sultans. The Sultanate of Tenochtitlan, also known as Al-Wasat, A-L-W-A-S-A-T, and Sultanate of T-E-N-O-C-H-T-I-T-L-A-N. Sultanate of T-E-N-O-C-H-T-I-T-L-A-N. In many historical documents, was a Muslim kingdom and a colony state of the Andalusian Empire, which is Moorish Empire, right? Based on where modern-day Mexico City is based. It also covered the areas of Lake Texcoco in the Valley of Mexico near the isthmus between Central and South America. Governor's conversion to Islam. As a result of Spain's various wars with Andalusia, Sultan Fajad II of Andalusia began funding expeditions and competing with Spain and Portugal. Sultan Fajad II sent missionaries to Central America, who promised the various Mesoamerican chiefs a victory against the Spanish conquistadors if they converted to Islam. A colonial general by the record name of Jose Cruz Mendez had close ties with many Spanish soldiers descended from the Reconquista veterans and those of Morisco women. Many of his servants were Morisco women who told him about the religion of Islam and even showed him Arabic texts in secret. The guy already had in the process of staging a rebellion against the Spanish crown, being completely disgusted by their actions. At the same time, Moorish missionaries from Al-Andalus and North Africa arrived, surprised to find the presence of Morisco women, begin initial contact. In the city of Tenochtitlan, at the site of the ancient temples, Jose and his son, Miguel, fell sick until he said Allahu Akbar, a phrase taught to him by his Morisco servants, and he was healed. You didn't chant no Aboriginal, Indigenous, Spanish, whatever. He was approached by
a... He didn't walk or nothing like that. He didn't, nothing like that, right? He didn't say how or nothing like that. Nothing. He didn't go in the teepee for nothing, none of that. Huh?
Didn't go to the sweat lodge. No sweat lodge or nothing like that. Allahu Akbar, right. Healed himself.
He didn't go to a powwow. He didn't be looking crazy. Killing himself.
Look up the Great Mosque of Mexico City. Look up the Great Mosque of Mexico City. It is of this reason that central Mexico is often known as the Moorish region or Little Andalusia. Little Andalusia. Saladin issued a declaration of sovereignty of the Tenochtitlan region and sent militias to hunt down Spanish viceroys. He later sealed his victory when he conquered most of Mexico City from Spanish armies. As a result, the new Moors of Mexico crowned Saladin as their king, where Spanish-speaking Muslims referred to him as Sultano Saladin. He converted a large Catholic church in Mexico City, where he converted many practicing Catholics to Islam and made efforts to rid Mexico of Catholicism. After conquering Mexico City, Sultan Saladin made the journey and pilgrimage to Mecca and recorded his visit in the Annals de Saladino. He traveled via Andalusian and Moroccan ships. He also made other visits such as Damascus, Cairo, and Mount Lebanon. Muslim historians regard the Sultan's visit to Mecca and establishment of the Sultanate, from which a tightly held Spanish Catholic territory, as one of the greatest achievements and miracles of the Muslim world. The Mamluk Sultans of Cairo were so impressed by Saladino's ability to stand and form a sultanate where all odds were against him, that the Sultans of Cairo offered him a palace of his own and sent him gifts of gold, silver, crops, and women on his way back to Mexico. A year later, Sultan Cruz revisited Egypt and decided upon an alliance with the Mamluks of Cairo. You're still in doubt? You can't be in doubt after they had a sultan over here in Mexico City that kicked out the Catholics, beat these people's ass for coming over here and trying some BS against the quote-unquote natives. No, hold on a second. So the Mexicans couldn't fight their own stuff. So they made somebody else their king who was Moorish, and then he kicked out the real infidels, and then now it became part of the empire, and they're calling him Sultan and all this. Where are the Indians at? How come they didn't? Where are the Indians at? Where are the Cherokees at? Where's the Iroquois Confederation and all that stuff at? Why are they talking about a sultanate over here? Or does that just qualify what we know, that, well, if the Sultan is going to be talking about Europeans, you can go to America and you can have 13 colonies. And obviously, the empire had to extend from over there to over here if they got sultanates here in Mexico City. It all makes sense once you read and study.
Islam, Grand Chief.
Islam more.
And just to add on, remember, we got to look up the 1778, 1787 map of Mexico.
Yep.
And once you Google that map, you can see the extension of ancient Mexico or whatnot. Because people think when they hear Mexico, they think it's just that little part that they show on the map now.
Yep.
In this day, Mexico wasn't. Mexico at one time went from where it's at now all the way up into Canada, so-called Canada. That was part of Mexico.
the Carolinas, Georgia, all the West Coast, California, Oregon, all of that, Louisiana, all of that was Mexico. And I want to add that in here because when you keep speaking of Mexico, you know, we got to remember with territory, a lot of these places that they talking about, a lot of those places, you go look at the towns like in Missouri, in Mississippi, no, in Missouri. They had Tangiers there. I mean, New Orleans, which was another place part of Mexico.
Yep, Crescent City.
That was exactly. They got that's Tangier. I mean, Algiers. If you Google Algiers, New Orleans, it's literally the place doesn't even look like it belongs here. Like, as soon as you click, you can just Google it. You can just Google Tangier. I mean, Algiers, New Orleans. Any picture they show you, it's all Moorish architecture. The whole place is Moorish architecture. The whole place is Moorish architecture. And that was part of Mexico. Before they changed and manipulated the maps, all those places are still here too. All those places are still here. Tangier, Algiers, here.
Yep. Here. Don't let these people
and then
try
when you
to
start
fool you.
looking up those places, like when did Tangier become a country? When did Algiers become like when you look up these places, you be like, wait a minute. Well, the Algiers that was established here is older than the established one. That's like, yeah, by like 200 years too. When the paperwork, the Tangier here, the one in Virginia, was established here first before the one over there. That's Numidia. Yeah, right. Numidia. Tangier was originally called Numidia.
Mm-hmm.
That's not. That's what it's called today. It used to be called Numidia. That's not Tangier's over here in Virginia. That's Numidia over there. They changed it.
Yep. Yepper. When the Mexican Revolution started, Muhammad ibn Mansur had become the Sultan. He nearly battled with Mexican revolutionary forces led by Miguel Hidalgo for control of Mexico City. However, Mansur and Hidalgo noticed that they shared a mutual hate for the Spaniards. The Sultan moved the state's capital back to Yathrib. A brief Spaniard victory in Mexico City resulted in the Great Mosque of Al-Wasat being converted to a Catholic church, and a cross was placed on the dome. Hidalgo's armies managed to push the Spaniards and their collaborators into Tenochtitlan once more, where they were attacked by Mansur's armies. Mansur met with Miguel Hidalgo in Mexico City to work out a peace agreement between the two. Mansur had no problem integrating his realm as part of a sovereign Mexican state free of Spanish rule. He was minorly worried about another Reconquista-like treatment. However, religion was the last of Hidalgo's concern, despite being a Roman Catholic priest. Therefore, Mansur agreed to help the revolutionaries defeat Spain and cede his sultanate to the new nation that would become Mexico as long as Tenochtitlan's Muslim autonomy remained and Mexico City's Muslims not to be forced to convert to Roman Catholicism and the Mosque of Al-Wasat be reverted back to a mosque. Hidalgo accepted the Sultan's conditions. Mansur ceded Tenochtitlan to the new country of Mexico and became its state governor, and Mexico and many Mexico City Muslims migrated to Tenochtitlan. Even though Hidalgo promised that he not force or convert them to Catholicism, Hidalgo allowed the church to be reverted back to a mosque as proof of the new friendship between him and Sultan Mansur. Right? And that's similar. That's very similar to the BS going on right now when you have Aboriginal people waking up to the truth and the fact that they're Moors. And then they start talking about Moors and speaking about Moorish history, showing unity with Moors. And then here come the Indians. Here come the black guys. Here come the whoever's now trying to beef with them because they don't want to be part of their Catholicism. They don't want to be part of their ignorant campaign. Same thing. Exact same thing. And these people stay playing around because they know that the jig is up. You can't keep pretending like you're something you're not and be making claims. Because claims are going to have no standing. That's just what it is. It's nothing personal against them. It's just the truth. Do they want to accept the truth? Well, you know, that remains to be seen. That remains to be seen. And again, as Moors, we're students of history. So we're not emotional about what we find out. We found out some BS about Moors and then we're mad. No, that's part of the history. We take the good, the bad, and the ugly. We take the good, we take the bad, and the ugly.
Yep. Yep. Every time, but that's the same thing now today, Grand Sheep. You know, like if my brother was down south doing something crazy, you know, something he ain't supposed to be doing, what I'm gonna say, that's not my brother. Right. It's still my brother.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like that's me. My mom had him. That's my brother. Like I can't be like, oh nah, he's not a Moor because brother, that's my brother. That's like my brother. You know, I can't just be like, oh, he's not my brother no more because he does this now. That don't make no sense.
Straight.
But incompetent people say that. That's what incompetent people say.
Yeah.
Because they're still all Moors. They're just dirty Moors or incompetent Moors. Because I was telling the Grand Sheik earlier, you know, because now I look at history and stuff like that. I look at us now. I can literally put into history, like you know how like when we read Moors were rulers of the Romans or whatever like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or Moors were in the Roman office and stuff like that. It's the same thing going on now.
Yeah.
You know, like Moors, it's still, but they call themselves black or indigenous, Native American stuff, African American, colored, but they're still Moors working or ahead of the Roman armies. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Nothing changed. They just call themselves something different now, but they're still the Moors. Still the Moors, and like how we always try to look when we do try to fact check and try to find Moors in history, and they can manipulate it because we're looking for bays, L's, and days back in the day when we researching titles and stuff. But because our ancestors had different titles, just like we have now. Like when somebody researched us 200 years from now, they're gonna be trying to look for Moorish names. They're not even gonna look for our straws or whatever. Yeah. You know what I mean? But we were under those straws, doing whatever Moorish things under those straws. But because we was labeled that in history, you're gonna look at as, well, maybe it was a European. That's crazy. Because that's how we look at stuff now. Like we'll read something like, oh, that's you know the vote with the Moorish headdress that they call a hat.
Yeah.
They say Ferdinand II of Cairo, he discovered that. He had got that from Montezuma II's son over there. I did further research on it. Come to find out, Ferdinand II
of Tyro was a Moor. I said, yo, that's crazy. I didn't know that. He is the one that got Montezuma's headdress and kept it in his like vault and like for decoration. Like, I'm the one that got this since like I'm the guy. And I'm like, yo, who is this running in a second? Looked him up, a Moor. I said, now that's crazy. that was crazy. That was crazy. So it was a Moor who wrote Ferdinand II of Tyro. He wrote that Montezuma's headdress was a Moorish hat. He's the one that wrote that in 1596. Ferdinand II of Tyro, a Moor. But when we think of it, we think now, oh, that must have been a European. Something told me to look him up, and it was a Moor. I was like, what else do you want? What else proof do you want? Yeah. A Moor said it was a Moorish hat in the records of 1596 of Montezuma, and called him a Moorish king. Ferdinand II of Tyro, Tyrol. You can Google him. They're going to show you some European pictures, but I found the Moorish one.
That's straight.
Yes, I found it. Because it was Moorish. It was Moorish. That's like when I be seeing, like when they talk about the Spaniards coming over here and they had Moorish influence in them. That's why a lot of the stuff in Mexico is Moorish, even though we know that's a lie. You know, we know that. But I'm like, what? I never heard of no other people on the planet that had ever happened to.
Yeah.
But like, oh, they got conquered for so long. There's different people, different culture, you know, that now they're just building stuff like them, and they can do like no, that don't happen. I never heard of that happening. Never. You're not gonna be like me. You're like that's all our architecture. Even that video you posted with the Muslim architecture in America, I was listening to one of the stories. The place in the story for the one in Florida, so-called Florida, the Moorish mosque in what's it called, Pensacola,
yeah,
Florida.
Pensacola, yeah.
Right. When they got that built, right? He tells the story. I'm listening to the story, Grand Sheik. The dude who wants to get it built, he comes to come visit the place, right? And the name was going to be something totally different. He didn't know what it was. Now, when they tell him the story, he didn't have the plans up for it or nothing. Now, the building's not even built yet, quote unquote, right? Says he brings his girlfriend the guy brings his girlfriend over there and says that it looks like the Alhambra. And he said, that's it. And they built the Alhambra. I said, wait a minute. That don't work like that. She can't come to a place that's not even built and say, it looks like the Alhambra. It don't work like that. It's not even built. How's she gonna say it looks like the Alhambra? And then y'all was like, oh, that's it. And then built the Alhambra. Nah. Yeah. Somebody lying.
Yeah. Good try.
Somebody lying.
Good try.
Somebody lying. It don't work like that.
Yep. Now also, one of the more sent the reference point. Now, we'll just put this one out there, just so you can see that it's universal. There's Mayan high priest right there with his fez on, with the feather in the front and all that stuff. Right? If the Mayans know they got fezzes, then somebody's lying to y'all. You can go get the download, Egypt Under the Pharaohs. Egypt Under the Pharaohs. Let's go download that one and get your head smashed. Of course, for those who study and read and all that. They don't study and they don't read them, you know. Masks of Mexico. The one-eyed, black-skinned Moor from Mexico. The one-eyed black-skinned Moor from Mexico. Moors, but in very different styles. Scans are attached if you're interested in seeing them. Mystery mask. Just Google the indigenous people who populate the area where you are going. Also, don't be afraid to visit some museums. Here is what it says about this one-eyed character found in Veracruz. Country, Mexico. Ethnicity, Nahua. Description, Moro mask. The Danza de los Moros y Cristianos, Dance of the Moors and Christians, reenacts the reconquest of Spain by the Christians from the Muslim Saracens. The story was taught by missionaries as part of an effort to instill respect for and fear of the Spaniards in the indigenous peoples, and to convince them that the victory of Christianity over other faiths by violence, whenever necessary, was inevitable. The dance is still performed widely in Mexico, including in Mexico State, Michoacan, Puebla, and Veracruz. Important characters include Spaniards, Moors, saints, angels, and devils. This Moro is unusual in having lost an eye. The lunar headdress. Oh, this one up. The lunar headdress, made of paper mache over a reed frame, is a symbolic representation of the new moon, a Moorish image. The dancers with masks like this one and with similar lunar crowns are the Moros or Moors, while Santiago and the Christians are without masks and wear the hats of cavaliers. Think of the Three Musketeers, borrowed from Mexican cowboys. They also wear sky blue capes. There is a third group of dancers wearing black masks and various colored jackets. I have not learned their name or role, but we'll call them blackamoors. These dancers cross swords with Santiago and his unmasked assistants, but are they Moors? One of the blackamoors carries a child Christian on his back, either to abduct or to protect. A child Christian in the Danza de los Santiagueros is said to represent Santiago's son, Kilinstin. I suppose the same character might occur in the Moros and Cristianos dance. So this is the Moors mask with the lunar headdress decorated and colored with foil. Now we ask the question again. How come they're not doing some cowboy and Indian dance? Why are they doing the dance of the Moors and the Christians?
Yeah, shouldn't they be doing like the rain dance or something? Why are y'all doing the Moros y Cristianos dance? Do the rain dance. Why aren't y'all doing the rain dance in the circle and stuff? Why ain't y'all doing that? That's all fraud. All those stories came thus after the conquistadors. All those stories came thus after that. They started lying. Carnegie Institution. It just took over the public education, just manipulated and changed all the education, so-called education and facts. They just changed it.
Just changed it. Just because.
Changed it.
Just because. Just because.
And that's a fact. And my other thing too, because I sit there and I think, and I'm like, because they're always saying, you know, the Moors stole it, you know, the Fez from the Masons, and I'm like, and the Moors, that's a Greek word, and I'm like, okay, we all agree that we created the Europeans, but then after that, these persons start giving all of this thing that we created all the credit. Like I just don't get that. Like I don't get that. Like, oh, when they say, oh, that's the white man's law, and this is the same person that came out of his mouth and said we created them, and I'm like, well, if we created them, how did they invent law? If they're cavemen, how cavemen create law? I would like to know that. If they're cavemen, how did the cavemen start masonry? You're a caveman. How do you start masonry? Freemasonry. How you did that? You're a caveman. How could you start Freemason or masonry? How could you start that?
Oh, let's just put this one out. We'll take a pause for the cause. Take a pause for the cause with this one.
All Moors are active, never passive. All Moors are active, never passive. Before I nationalized in 2007, I used to wonder why Moors talk like a reverend. God drew Ali like a religious idol, and that I have to listen to them cause they're the station or title. Moorish pastors active, Moors actors. God drew like a parrot and they're the parrots. On the shoulder, repeating everything, never doing. Constantly trying to stagnate the movement. Drew said new Moors will come with eyes wide open, seeing and knowing, not the kind hoping. Move up from belief to faith into fruition. Couldn't answer my question, but you want me to listen. When I mention HL, or Taj to be paid, they dissing. Saying Moors on a suicidal mission. Moors told me I'll get locked up, don't follow Taj, cause sheriffs have authority with a 6-point badge. Don't follow nature, babe, he's not a Moor. But when I watch his classes, he's saying much more. When I mention Dawid Ali El in Mecca, if words could injure, that Moor would be on a stretcher. When I mention Elihu, they say he lied too. But they always say Circle 7 is the most Bible. They engage me, so I say they do. Didn't want me to be on the lessons that I drew.
Same people would sit around and say, you know, these crackers stole everything. These crackers don't have nothing if it wasn't for us. But then we'll sit right around and turn around and say that we are taking from them, from them.
Yeah, I just wanted to back you up with that one. Just wanted to back you up with that one. All of a sudden, crackers taught us something. All of a sudden. Just like that, crackers taught us something.
Are they live now?
Huh?
You said they're live now?
Oh, no. I just wanted to back you up with what you were just saying.
Okay, thanks for that.
Yeah. Right. I want to throw a shout out again. Honors to Michelle Gibson. Make sure you go to her website, Piercing the Veil of Illusion. She got about 100 articles up there. And again, can't go wrong with the people who aren't afraid to bring up the Moors and at least put it out there. Following the money and influence, the ways we were kept asleep.
Islam, Grand Sheik.
Islam.
Sorry.
No worries.
If I can just add, because you bring up Michelle Gibson,
yeah,
right? And you give her a shout out, and I want to give her a big give thanks because a European had put in her comment section basically was asking her what was her whole point of her videos that she's putting up and whatnot.
Mm.
And she did not stray away from her proving that this is the Moroccan Empire, the Moorish paradigm. And so she did not stray away from it. So I want to give her a huge
Islam.
give thanks for that. You know what I mean? Because that was big time for her to not
straight. You know, she could have. Oh, let me try to do it where I don't want nobody mad at me. She never did it.
Yeah.
She told them what video you can go back and watch. You know what I mean? Like, and I knew what video she was talking about. Those were the ones in the beginning when she's showing Dr. Alim and all of that. I'm like, yeah, man, like trying to tell you that's what she's standing on.
Yeah.
And
standing on that truth.
But again, right? But we're going against the Moors. The Moors themselves trying to prove to them that they're the Moors. And this lady is going, and the person that put that online, that was that's like a mini threat. You know what I mean? That's how I looked at it. I'm like, because you already know what she's putting these videos up for.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And and she didn't stray away from it. You know, and for sometimes people, I went in as a Moor and I went in as an Indian, but the Indian stuff was easier. Yeah, but here's the European right here, standing on the Moors harder, and I'm gonna stay with the Moor. Right. Like she not straying away from it. No matter who came at her or not, and that's just the facts to the contrary. So I want to give a big thanks to the Michelle Gibson for that Islam branching. Exactly.
Following the money and influence, the ways we were kept asleep. In the process of doing the research for my blog post, I'm finding out, you can just go to Michelle, just look up Michelle Gibson. She'll come up, European with glasses, short hair, and check her stuff out. She goes in for the Moors. In the process of doing the research for my blog post, I'm finding out how the new historical narrative was created and implemented, and how the original history was deconstructed and reconstructed into a new narrative in which we are immersed and indoctrinated from cradle to the grave. By following money and influence, the true picture of what has taken place here emerges. I believe humanity was on the completely different and positive timeline of the ancient Moorish civilization up until relatively recently. This civilization built all of the infrastructure on the earth in alignment with sacred geometry and universal law to create harmony and balance between heaven and earth. After wiping out this civilization by creating a worldwide liquefaction event causing a mud flood, which I believe took place during the Great Frost of Ireland between 1740 and 1741, the powerful life-enhancing infrastructure of the planetary grid system of the Moors needed to be dug out and was reverse engineered into a control system for humanity. Right, and then this is what she got on her page for, on her little article. She put that book reference out. By the mid-1800s, enough infrastructure had been dug out of the mud flows to officially restart the New World civilization at the Crystal Palace expedition of 1851. 1851. Right, remember the timelines, but she's on it. The beings behind the hijacked timeline base much in the new historical narrative on the Moorish legacy, but twisted and subverted from its original meaning. Twisted and subverted from its original meaning. For one example, this is Moorish Islam. The hiding of this ancient advanced civilization in plain sight was accomplished by shaping the false narrative, educating us in it, and reinforcing it with images coming from Hollywood, literature, art. It is not supposed to be there, so we don't see it, don't even think it. So, how were we put and kept asleep? In this post, right, this is the true Islam. This is a European saying. In this post, I am going to focus primarily on the international creation and promotion of distractions through, as with everything else, connections to other things will come up frequently. A distraction is a thing that prevents someone from giving full attention to something else. Why on earth would we be kept addicted, drugged, and distracted? Why on earth? Why on earth would people be telling you about Indians when they could tell you about Moors? Why? Why would they go so hard to try to push the fact about Indians when Indian came from Indios, which came from Los Indios, which means the godless ones? They're admitting that they're the godless ones, and clearly they are, because they have no idea about the word, because they talk more colorable than anybody else out here. There are several reasons, right, why on earth we are kept addicted, drugged, and distracted. There are several reasons. The main reason is the negative beings don't want us to know who we really are and why we are here. Each human being is a living hologram of the universe, and our sole purpose of existence is to ultimately reunite spiritually with our higher self and balance our masculine and feminine qualities along the lines of the divine masculine and divine feminine, which is what the Moors were doing before the hijack. Moorish American master adepts in the present day are wisdom keepers of ancient, sacred, Kemetic mysteries and knowledge about all creation. They are living practitioners of Egyptian yoga, also known as Wajet yoga and Meru Neter, the language of the Egyptian hieroglyphs. The parasitic and multidimensionally aware beings behind all of this want us to believe that suffering, sickness, misery, destruction, death was and is our normal state of being, and not question what we have been taught about who we are. They are the only ones who benefit because they energetically feed on humanity's negative emotional states. And that's nothing, that's just a little piece of the, it's just a little piece. That's just a little piece of the article. You can go read it all. Don't forget her website, piercingtheveilofillusion.com, and go read every article on there. She is not playing. She is not playing. Also, too, if you want to get some propaganda on the prophet again, Patrick Bowen on the Journal of Race, Ethnicity, and Religion has an article called Abdul Hamid Suleiman and the Origins of the Moorish Science Temple. Abdul Hamid Suleiman and the Origins of the Moorish Science Temple. Patrick D. Bowen. Talking crazy about Suleiman as some blue-eyed, dark-skinned, dark-skinned Egyptian that taught Noble Drew Ali or whatever. People tripping. Tripping. And for the one that we just put up, Islam to the good brother, Yusuf Matadiel, for studying. And I just wanted to put this one out there just so you can know that we're looking out for you, Moors. Looking out for you. Dear Mr. L, Ed Marquand just forwarded your email to me, and I would be happy to talk to you regarding my book. Presently, I am in the Midwest in Kansas, so I can call you later today if that works so you can discuss the proposal regarding a telephone interview. The wholesale price of the book is 25 notes and is available from my distributor at Paper Hammer. Thank you for interest in my book, and I look forward to speaking with you soon. Sincerely, Phil Pasquini, author of Domes, Arches, and Minarets, A History of Islamic-Inspired Buildings in America. So Be on the lookout for that one. We're going to be doing that one momentarily.
Wow, that's gonna be crazy.
We're going to be doing that one momentarily. All right? We're going to be doing that one momentarily. So bear with us on that one. But we'll just read this article that Brother Yusuf sent me, and make sure you let him know that Cujo sent you to go get the book, Domes, Arches, and Minarets by Phil Pasquini. And please get it at Paper Hammer Books. Don't go anywhere else but Paper Hammer Books. 256 pages, 132 photographs. Right? And don't forget, bulk orders for any temple people out there. That's when you pay your 25 notes. Individual books, 45 notes. So, you know, support true knowledge. Let's just see what he has to say in this article right here. America's Domes, Arches, and Minarets. Photojournalist Phil Pasquini, a longtime tip contributor to RoadsideAmerica.com, is the author of Domes, Arches, and Minarets, a history of Islamic-inspired buildings in America. Phil spent 4 years crisscrossing the U.S. to research and photograph hundreds of eclectic structures of an underappreciated architectural style. America's oldest example is the Alamo, built in the 1700s in a Moorish style by Spaniards. Through Pasquini's discerning lens, we see that examples of Islamic architecture in America are more common and varied than we previously realized. From an armory in Georgia, a strip club in Los Angeles, to the Civic Center Frank Lloyd Wright designed for Marin County, California. Its distinctive flourishes, lines, and character grace many historic government buildings, churches, synagogues, and mausoleums. As a lover of roadside Americana, Phil also documents several classic tourist sites, including the Onion-Domed Corn Palace, Mitchell, South Dakota, and Villa Zoraya Castile, St. Augustine, Florida, home of a cursed cat hair rug. Domes, Arches, and Minarets is devoted chiefly to non-tourist attracting buildings in aging downtowns and on side streets unnoticed, their architectural roots forgotten. To real aficionados of Islamic architecture, say someone from the Middle East, America's crazy mosaic of design elements might appear ridiculous. That'll be right, considering how the cultural transfusion occurred. Rich Americans traveling the world would see landmark temples. They'd come home and order their buildings to get working on a doorway, arches, and Turkish domes. Literature and Hollywood movies also greatly affected depictions of the Middle East, and millions of Americans got a taste of the streets of Cairo, a popular and reoccurring attraction at World's Fairs, according to Pasquini. Perhaps the most bizarre sources of Islamic architecture in the US were the Shriners. Formed in the 1870s, the ancient Arabic order of the Nobles of the Mystic Shrine was neither ancient nor Arabic. It was a couple of guys forming a secret society for fraternal fun. We think of them as the fez-wearing, tiny car-driving comic relief in the town parade, but they built many grand shrine temples in Islamic style. Companies were also attracted to the style for the use in corporate buildings. Sparkletch Drinking Water Corporation adopted a Moorish revival design for their headquarters in Los Angeles. Phil notes that the building's 2 minarets were damaged in the 1971 earthquake and were dismantled by the remaining structure of white walls and domes is of a serene Middle Eastern building set down in the middle of a busy commercial area. The city of Opa-locka, featured on the book's cover, was transformed by Islamic architecture. Built during the Florida real estate boom of the 1920s, Opa-locka's vision was primarily inspired by the book The Arabian Nights. The city has numerous Moorish revival homes and stunning city hall with pink domes, parapets, and minarets. In 2010, we teamed up with Phil and his journalist wife Elaine to take a tour at Fort Irwin, where the US government constructed over a dozen fake Iraqi and Afghan villages for use in troop training. A few photos Phil shot there are in his book. Great images illuminating a sobering new use of an architectural style that has been welcomed into America for 4 centuries. Domes, Arches, and Minarets by Phil Pasquini. Trust that it's not a game out here. It is real, so real. So real. Islam Moor.
Islam Moor.
I just wanted to put out there too. How did you get into your finding of that one? The Pasquini.
The minaret.
Yeah. How the Allah guide you to that one?
Up late studying and what it was I was okay. I love being a Moor. That's the first problem. Be like I love being a Moor. Like that's so like when I go research who I am, like I go in very, very like uncomfortably hard. Like I'm gonna go to the fullest of researching. So the way it is like I'll type in Moorish and put every word but on the side of it for hours. Just any word that comes to my head, I'll type in Moorish. So what I was doing was I started on YouTube. I was typing in Moorish Argentina, Moorish Panama, Moorish, and started just naming all the places in the South. And this guy just came up, man. Like, and I don't know why. It had nothing to do with nothing I was looking for, but because it started saying Moorish. It said minarets. It doesn't even say Moorish. It says Islamic minarets, and or does it? I don't remember. I think it just said Islamic. I don't even think it says Moorish.
Yeah.
And he popped up on the screen, popped right up. It was like the 5th video on the thing, and I was like, oh, I wonder what he's talking about. As soon as I clicked on it, and I fast forward, the lady speaking.
yeah, exactly.
That's the first. Just get to the meat and potatoes. I want to hear him. And once he
Let's
started,
hear what he said.
Right. I watched him for a little bit, and then once he started talking about places I never heard before, that's when I was like, okay, you're interesting. Because I never even heard of these places or seen these pictures. And Michelle Gibson was the one that started me on this. Okay, now I got to really look at the places that surround me. And then now this guy comes up, and he's a so-called Turk too. He's not so-called European. He's a Turk. I mean, he may look pale skin or whatever, but he's Turkish. He's not even European.
Like that, yeah.
Like that. Right. But you just already know.
Yeah.
The ancestors just let them pop up, and I was like, man. And he's already written books, articles, all about it.
Yeah.
And he's another one, Prophet said, The Europeans gonna help me, why not you?
Yep. If the Europeans gonna help me, why not you? So I want to say Islam to all the Moors, peace and love to all the Moors worldwide, but we're not done yet. Still got to beat these guys up. That was just a teaser. We still got to beat these guys up, talking crazy, because now that we know that the indigenous, well, some of the indigenous Aboriginal Autochthonists know that they're Moors, you know, when they get their little attacks and stuff like that from these so-called sellouts among them, you know, we gotta say something. Can't just let them slide by with their BS. So the first stop is they were dissing our video by lying, supremely lying, and we just want to correct their lying before it gets too far, because they already got 1,300 views from our video, and we just want to make sure that we set the record straight with these liars.
See, now what I want everyone to do is I want y'all to listen to what this lady is saying. I want you guys to understand what these Moors are doing. You know, they're not using the supreme laws of the land, and these Moors are trying to tell us not to claim our heritage, and they're trying to tell us not to claim Indian. So they're trying to get you from up under the protection of the laws of the land. So just pay.
Now, remember, Indian comes from Los Indios. There's no such thing as an Indian. As soon as you hear somebody say Indian, automatically know, oh, that's Vatican. That's a Vatican distractor. As soon as they say Indian, oh, that's Spanish Inquisition, trying to get me away from my Moorish lineage and culture. As soon as you hear Indian, no, oh yeah, that's a ward of the state, ward of the crown, talking as if they have some type of superior authority. Now go get the book. Actually, before we go there, let's just read this. What's an Indian? Refers to the fact that the Indian is an invention of the European. When Columbus arrived on the shores of so-called Turtle Island, there was a large number of different and distinct indigenous cultures, but there were no Indians. In the book, The White Man's Indian by Berkhofer Jr., Berkhofer Jr., he writes, since the original inhabitants of the Western Hemisphere neither called themselves by a single term nor understood themselves as a collectivity, the idea and the image of the Indian must be a white conception. Native Americans were and are real, but the Indian was a white invention. And that's from the book, The White Man's Indian. The White Man's Indian.
Just pay attention. Just listen.
Oh, go ahead, Moore.
You know, because it's just when we tell them, you know, that's not your book, Grand Sheep. You know what I mean? That's not what you wrote. That's not the Moors or the Moor. That's how they make it seem. Oh, the Moors are saying you're not Indian. That's not a Moor. A Moor didn't write that book. We just reading the facts and repeating the facts. That's all we doing. So once again, go debate the author of the book who said that Indian is the white man such and such. Like, go debate him. Don't debate Moors. Because we've been telling them all that stuff. Deludes right back to slavery. Been telling you.
Right back to slavery.
Been telling them. just starting to put documents out now, and about Native Americans / Indians being stateless. You put the article up the other day, Green Sheet.
Yep.
They just starting to put it up now. Moore's been talking about it, but they only going to put it out now because people are just getting to the knowledge. But the Moors are the ones that bring the people to the knowledge.
Exactly.
That's why everybody coming out with the information now. We've been Native American, Indian, you call it stateless. And that's how I know the so-called United States, they lie about their numbers, because they'll say it's only 1.9 million people in the United States who are stateless. And I'm like, no, that's a lie. Yeah,
way more than that.
If you say you're in the United States, you're stateless. So,
automatic. Automatic statelessness. Automatic statelessness.
Right? No paper involved. People are using the paper first and never declaring.
Declaring. Yeah.
That's why I can't stand on the paper, because it's not the paper. Right. But here's the paper. You should study it. You still hold it. Right. Like you said. Absolutely. Absolutely. But here's a new thing. I mean, it ain't a new thing. These Europeans, we have found out, occupiers have been claiming the land. Now, we know that land means the building that's on it. Right. We know this already. Nobody should be without a place to live. Nobody. Because it's not theirs. They are saying that they are administrators, right? Well, then they're just proving it. Administrator. What are you administrating? Right. Our estates. Right. That's right. Right. And now, getting to the tribal name. Right. I'm glad that, I know you always know, but a lot of other people want to stop and say I'm an Indian. Right. But not Indian. Ain't Indian. That name, that tribal family attributes is.
Listen to what she said. That tribal family. She said family. So when we're dealing with family, we're dealing with the actual people. Now, just continue to listen.
Just a family. What they call tribe name is a family name. Family of Moors.
Now it's federalized. It's a coin term. You don't even know.
Listen what he said. He said it's federal. It's federalized now. It's a coined term. So they just admitted that our tribal names are designated to our families, and they're also admitting that the invaders are using our family names as corporations, as franchises, as agencies. So if they're doing that, then that means the Bureau of Indian Affairs have no power or no say-so in Indian business. Do you understand what I'm saying, y'all?
No, we don't.
You know what I'm saying? No, see how you just lied and made
that up? We don't understand what you're saying. Because the point of them saying that it's just a family name is because family means servant. It's just a family name because family means slave.
That's all it means.
It's just a family name. Family means that you're under the jurisdiction. Because why would you claim a quote unquote tribe or tribal when this is an empire? Why would you claim that America is an island when it's a continent? That's either incompetence or European psychology. You guys didn't say it is Turtle Continent. You say Turtle Island. America's is not an island. So to even say that out of your mouth is incompetent. On top of that, you're claiming that you're tribes. And then you're claiming that you're tribes and you're not letting everything be known. So let's just go to the original. Let's hear what else is said, because they like to just play stuff and just do some convenient stuff and not put out the whole stuff. So let's just.
Sovereign, right? Yeah. Now they can be charged for impersonating the sovereign, but you can't.
Yeah, I know.
Because they could be sovereign when they like Germany, they're German, right? You understand this? A lot of our people didn't really get this at first. Now the other thing that gets me about what we don't seem to Jedi studies on, and that is, you know this whole story. You ain't really a real Moor if you ain't in the temple. All right. Now look. How you going to gain your lost? The prophet said you will gain back your heritage, and lost the state. Seemingly lost the state. But it'll be done in the conflict camp in total march. Right. Now, to describe to you where that is, you read chapter 47.
Right.
Now, if chapter 47 describes our geographical boundaries of the empire of the dominions, why we keep acting like it's the Europeans?
Right.
And then, in case you don't realize it, then tell me where is then the estate that the prophet said you were going to gain back. Where is it? Well, you'll never get it if you don't know where it is. You see, these are the common sense things. So what happens is clubism, which is from the corruption. You know that. That's why you won't even be bothered. A lot of people didn't want to be bothered with temples because when you say religion, of course, religion is law, order, and governing principles. Absolutely. And civic. Absolutely. Divine and national. Here's the deal. You can't apply the national if you don't have the divine.
That's right.
But you can't give the divine to someone.
Yeah, you can't give it to someone. You can't keep recycling the same book. It's not.
That's
it's
a corruption.
It's not there.
Let me tell you what it is. It's a corruption and what's called clubism.
Yeah.
So listen to this. You're gonna love this, right? So the guy says, well, you know, you gotta be paying dues and you gotta be in the temple in order to be a Moor. What? Y'all gonna come up with this point everywhere, so it don't matter. Put something what opens it up. Oh, so you're only a real Moor if you're in a temple? Let me see. Question number 14. Why are you your descendants of Moroccan? Excuse me, that's why we're Moors now. Wait, what did you say? Oh, you didn't read this? That's when you know that they're steeped in the clubism. But in this time now with information, it's kind of being like thrown. It's coming off. It's coming off.
I have no choice.
Cause we gotta have a connection. And I figure like, you know, it's like remember before people say, well, let me see you drive with no license, you know, right there, the language you really want to know is travel, right? Let me see you do it. Too many people have done it, are doing it, and it doesn't mean that they're not going to try to stop you. What are you talking about? This is food coming off their plate right now. Right?
Oh,
look,
yeah, I know.
Now look at South Carolina.
I did it for 6 years.
Look, put it on the map.
I can tell you, came up there through Canada on our plate.
See,
through on our plates. Bam, here go ID.
And never a problem, is it?
Went straight into Canada.
No problem.
And came back. No problem.
See, it's when you exercise your rights, and you know you have it right here on your dock plate, and you know, even if they're gonna hinder you for a minute, you just gonna be hindered. You know, hindered but not detained, right? Oh well, you know, not arrested.
Right, not arrested.
Wait a minute, let me see. What do you mean you don't know this? Right here. Okay, so now here we are. Identification card. Boom. We got an identification card that is spirit on it. That the card itself supports. I mean, I'm just saying the card. It right there tells you everything you need to know. I mean, everything. National domicile, ancestral estate. I mean, it's so hard that people look at it and say, well, I went to, I had to get a credit, the federal credit union account for, obvious reasons, and using the ERA and not SSN. I didn't use that because, that's different. It's a whole different problem. So I took the card, right? Well, this isn't a state card. State ID. I said, yes, it is. It's just not a corporate state ID. You gotta know how to answer it. You're right. It's not a corporate state ID, but it's a nation state. Then you go to the Aboriginal Nationalist rights to establish your own identity that must be respected. So now these people talking about what is that? Your identity. First of all, how are they going to take your property from you? It's your property.
That's what man Kucho was talking about. It's the rules of evidence. Self-identification is 901 in the federal rules of evidence.
Right.
Self-identification.
Yeah, that's what it says. Can't nobody identify what you. Matter of fact, this whole mission of the prophet king was to teach you to be yourself. Who you
Right.
me, who somebody else gonna, they can't identify you.
Right.
So it's there.
It puts a lot of paperwork obsolete.
Right.
Really?
No, see, here's the deal. If you really know what you know, you never need to pay.
That's what I'm
Right,
saying.
right.
It really puts it out
And this is
there.
why we tell people, you gotta be able to stand without the paper. Matter of fact, this
Right.
brother that came into the class that time, well, I gotta go check the book. I said, no, brother, you standing on your 2 feet. You better know what you're talking about. Especially when you come into somebody else's class. And I gotta be on my feet to respond to you. I think you need to know what you bring.
Yeah, you better come right.
You better not need to have to open that book to say, but you gotta say that. You know, but it's you know, we know that ultimately, see, here's what it is. I'll tell you the difference between declaration and proclamation. The prophet said, all you got, if you don't do nothing else, declare. Why? Because it's already proclaimed, really.
Yeah.
But however, proclaiming absolutely means printing, whereas declaring does not necessarily mean that it's in written form. So what you're talking about is the absolution of declaring.
Right.
Here's what's happening. See, when you declare the nationality, it comes from within. You can stand right here and declare, right? In front of a couple witnesses or to yourself. Then you start being who you are, right? No paper involved. People are using the paper first and never declaring.
Declaring. Yeah. Think
That's
the
why you
paper.
can't
Think the
stand
paper
on
makes
paper,
them. Yeah.
because it's not the paper. But here's paper. You should study it.
It's the heart.
Right.
Like you said.
Absolutely, absolutely. But here's the new thing. I mean, it ain't a new thing. These Europeans, we have found out, occupiers have been claiming the land. Now, we know that land means the building that's on it.
Right.
We know this already. Nobody should be without a place to live. Nobody. Because it's not theirs. They are saying that they are administrators, right? Well, then they're just proving it. What are you administrating?
Right.
Our estates.
Right. And that you know the trustee gave.
That's right.
Right.
And now, getting to the tribal name. I'm glad that, I know you always know, but a lot of other people want to stop and say I'm an Indian. But not Indian. Ain't Indian. That name, that tribal family attribute is just a family, what they call tribe name, is a family name. Family of Moors.
Now it's federalized as a coin term. You don't even want to use that.
Listen, because you never were Indian.
That's right.
And if you read Clinton's executive order 10375, I think they'll call it.
Now it's federalized as a coin term. You don't even want to use that.
Listen, because you never were Indian.
That's right.
And if you read Clinton,
Now it's federalized as a coin term. You don't even want to use that.
listen, because you never were Indian.
That's right.
And if you read Clinton's executive order 10375, I think they'll call me on that. I'll tell you when it was 1987 implementation of human rights. It's 2 pages. Turn it over, double side, right about there, around paragraph 5. You know what he says? He says federally reserved Indians and Native Americans. He makes the distinctions. So they're like, if you're Indian, you need to go to the BIA, which is the Bureau of Indian Affairs.
So let's just see if they let all that play, if they're playing around with you.
Let me repeat that again. If the laws of the land says that the Indians is to regulate the United States, then if these foreigners are using our family names and are subjects to the United States, then they are not the real people. Do you understand that? Do you understand what the fuck that I'm saying? This video, when was this video? It was put out about 6 years ago by Canaanland Moors. So these niggas was saying not too long ago, years ago, don't claim Indian. So now all of a sudden these motherfucking Moors are saying I'm indigenous, aboriginal, American, Moorish American. They're adding all these titles because now they're trying to hijack. They're trying to ride the wave, baby. They're trying to ride the wave. And don't let these motherfuckers ride the wave. Wipe their ass out.
The question is, where were you 6 years ago? That's the real question. 6 years ago, where were the Indians at when the Moors were talking about don't be Indians? That's the question.
Right.
The real question is, where was Aboriginal Mac at 6 years ago when Moors were traveling all over the country or whatever, doing lecture in Delaware, all the way from Canaanland, going to Delaware jurisdiction to be with the Moors in order to put this on the record and upload it 6 years ago. And why are you just talking about this now in 2019? How come? Because these people weren't even around 6 years ago. They got some nerve call us niggers when we were more 6 years ago. Guaranteed, these people were niggers 6 years ago. They weren't on this knowledge 6 years ago. Matter of fact, let's just go check, see when they started their little page or whatever.
They're still labeled as minorities. Native Americans, Indians, First Nations, all of them are classified as minorities.
Right, had a YouTube page since 2011. Let's just see how far back this goes. Eight months ago. So they just started uploading a year ago. So they just start uploading a year ago. A year ago, they started uploading. They got some nerve. They got some nerve. Some nerve. Again, we're stressing the point that anybody calling you Indian is really calling you Los Indios, which comes from the Vatican, which comes from the conquistadors, which comes from the Catholics who came over here and raped and pillaged and quartered your ancestors. And they're calling themselves the term that the colonizer called them while they were quartering them. That's how much of a sellout is going on right now. Right now, that's how much of a sellout is going on right now.
Use that. Listen, because you never were Indian.
That's right. And you heard what her dad said? How you gonna say of people these that the Indians had family names and tribal names, and now she's saying that we never were Indian. Now she's saying we never were Indian. But this is what I try to tell y'all. Y'all better be careful, because these Moors gonna get you motherfucking locked up, and they gonna get your shit taken from you. For real, for real.
You read Clinton's executive order 10375, I think.
Talking about Clinton executive order. Executive order is not a law. It's an action. That's all it is. It's an action. If it violates the Constitution, then it is null and void. That means you have to know your rights and your freedom to counter what these motherfuckers are saying.
I tell you when it was 1987 implementation of human rights. It's 2 pages. Turn it over, double side, right about there, around paragraph 5. You know what he says? He says federally reserved Indians and Native Americans. He makes the distinctions. So that.
Now, when they say federally reserved Indians or Native Americans, that means that those that are under the United States. That means those who are subject to the United States. So if you don't know your heritage, if you don't know who you are, then
Yeah, you might be an Indian, but if you don't know you are, then you are subject to the United States. This is what these orders are for. These are what these executive orders are for. So pretty much, they make these executive orders. So they write them out as if, okay, you know, okay, let me just say this. Let me use this for an example. Like with the Snyder Act.
All of this is opinion too.
Yeah.
Everything he's saying right now is just an opinion.
Strict opinion. Strict opinion. Nothing but opinion.
How it made Indian citizens, right? But not every Indian is a citizen of the United States. And even if he is, if he know his heritage, the United States cannot, he's not, okay. When the Indian know his heritage or her heritage, they are not subject to the United States. That's the difference between an Indian that know who they are and an Indian who do not. Because the Indian who know who they are and know the laws, know they are protected from the invasion of the United States. The Indian who do not know who they are and don't know the laws will fall subject to the United States.
And that's a lie. Because an Indian who knows who he is wouldn't call himself an Indian. And an Indian who doesn't know who he is wouldn't call himself an Indian. Because there's no such thing as an Indian. You probably need it again since people are incompetent out here and don't study and don't read. You probably need it again. It was important for me to use this terminology as the title for my note because many Native Americans today use the term Indians or Indios to identify themselves. Los Indios eventually became Indios over time. After Columbus arrived in the Americas, the indigenous inhabitants became known in Spanish as Los Indios. Became known as Los Indios, which was Indios, which became Indian over time. And now they call themselves Indian, not realizing that that's a Spanish conquistador term for the indigenous people of this land who were Moors that built mosques, minarets, and all that other stuff that's Moorish. Wear Moorish hats and all that.
You get what I'm saying?
Like, if you're Indian, then you need to go to the BIA, which is right here old Indian flag.
Now you heard what her dumbass said. You're an Indian, you need to go to the BIA. When the BIA was created to go against the Indians. This is how dumb the Moors are. And look, like I said, look right here. It says in 2013. And I told y'all this is what the Moors been talking about a long time ago. Now they trying to switch their story to be Indians and indigenous and all this other shit to the Americans. But just a few years ago, these motherfuckers said they came out of Africa. They were slaves in Africa. They were in Egypt. Like, come on, man.
Stop lying. They no more.
He just lied.
They no more said that they're slaves from Africa. Stop lying. Stop lying. Go ahead, Moore.
You know he's a lie. We go over in class way too much reading references who the real slave is, the word slave, who is derived from, and then we show how Europeans were paying annual tribute to Moors, how European Christians was getting ransomed by the Moors by the millions, and like we don't say we're slaves. Period. Like
Period.
It's the Pan-African people get mad at Moors for that specific argument because we denied the whole slave trade, because the slave trade they talking about, we ran the Atlantic Ocean. The Atlantic slave trade, how the Moroccan Empire extended onto the Atlantic Ocean. How could we be getting enslaved? And that's we prove that all the time. We stand on that definitively. Like, that's crazy for him to say that's a lie. It's just a blatant lie. He knows he's lying too.
Yep, knows that he's lying. And keep in mind as well, end of time and fulfilling of the prophecies, Noble Drew Ali in the 1920s told the Moors, "Come all ye Asiatics of America." Not Asiatics of Africa, not Asiatics of Asia, Asiatics of America. What the hell does that mean? Wouldn't that mean that they're Aboriginal and Indigenous, these Asiatics? In the 1920s, forget 2013. In the 1920s, man said that we're of America, these Asiatics. Descendants of Moroccans born in America. Where's Morocco? Over there? In the 1920s? No. No.
Come on. Stop these motherfuckers in their tracks. Anybody who talking bad or trying to talk you out of being an Indian, that is the motherfucking ops. Nigga, you have your family records. You have your paperwork saying your people are Indian. So why would you listen to a motherfucker who don't even have pay? Man, look. Why would you listen to a motherfucking KFC hat wearing motherfucker when they don't even have their family lineage or heritage? Come on, man. These Moors are lost. They don't have not one document of their ancestors being known as Moors.
What we go through for the past 3 hours? Let me show you documentation upon documentation upon documentation upon book upon book upon article proving that Moors were over here. Spanish came over here and saw Moss and said Moors. Like we said in the beginning, Moors always present the facts. If you got problems, if you want to debate something, go debate the people who put out the info.
Right. And another thing too to add on, when they say show the document, it's like they want you to show them a United States government document that shows where the Moors was or whatever. But we're showing you when the conquistadors who predate the United States Foundation by 200 years.
Yep.
By 200 years. We're showing you in their documents that they were referring to the people here as Moors. Like, the United States didn't even exist when the conquistadors got here. So that's disqualified too. Like, so don't try to make it seem as if show me your United States. No, we're showing you the conquistadors that predate the United States by 200 years. I don't want to hear that. And then when we show you the document of the United States with us recognizing the United States, that's not the treaty. That doesn't say more and all of that. And then we prove all of that. None of that matters neither. None of it matters.
Yep. Again, Noble Drew Ali stressing this thing that we've been saying that we're here, right? By order of Prophet Noble Drew Ali has said the following thing during this our very first convention. Prophet Noble Drew Ali said that the Moorish Science Temple of America was organized to play a useful and defining part in the advancement of the sacred obligation of American citizenship. What's that? American citizenship does not have nothing to do with U.S. What's American mean? Oh, the copper colored who were found here before the Europeans, right? Okay. As the Moorish divine and national movement was founded for the uniting of the Asiatic states of North America. The Asiatic states of North America, not the Asiatic states of Asia, not the Asiatic states of Africa, not the Asiatic states of Australia, the Asiatic states of America. What is he telling you? Obviously, that these Asiatics are Aboriginal and Indigenous here. So don't let these people fool you out of your birthright. Don't let them play you and have you call yourself Los Indios, thinking that you're claiming something. You can't be Los Indios. It's impossible. Let's finish off with what the mother was saying.
So we're getting there because, like Prophet said, you need each other, but you need each other more later. Not later, it's now, and we can all come together and see it with one. Because I'm telling you, we could cancel almost all this stuff overnight. The only one thing I want to know, somebody can have. This is what I'm thinking. I'm not sure. When the blood is going to be in the street, and we're warned about, right? I don't think it's necessarily our blood unless we're going to get in the way and not know what we're supposed to do.
Because this financial crash is going to be the civil war, and that's going to be that blood in the street, like you
But
said.
that's the Europeans. They're going to have a fizzy fit when they find out that you don't have, you never did have money. All that you work for isn't yours. It's happening now. They're killing, and you know what they start doing? They start killing politicians. Now, people, I keep hearing over and over again this vision of people saying they're going to run it down the street after attorneys, trying to get the attorneys because they're agents. They're agents. So I'm thinking
the monkeys in the Wizard of Oz.
the blood's not going to be our blood necessarily. Some of us is going to be mixed up because we won't listen. We'll be hard-hearted. But for the most part, it's going to be they're going to run it down the street after attorneys, trying to get the attorneys because they're agents. So I'm thinking
the monkeys in the Wizard of Oz.
the blood's not going to be our blood necessarily. Some of us is going to be mixed up because we won't listen. We'll be hard-hearted. But for the most part, it's going to be there. We're going to have to protect ourselves from the anarchy they're creating, because we know our government is not an anarchy. This government is, we know it is.
It's going to be just like the 1930s when they crashed. We was cool.
Hey.
We was cool. Like, oh, for real, that happened? I didn't know nothing about it.
So, but I think with the vibration of the planet moving faster now, and a lot of people's brainwaves can't keep up with that. What they call a new paradigm is really the movement of the vibration. The vibration of the planet's moving, Earth, everything, and so people are losing their mind. Right?
It's working.
Right? That's what's happening. They can't take it, can't keep up with it. It's really the movement of the vibration. The vibration of the planet moving faster now, and a lot of people's brainwaves can't keep up with that. What they call a new paradigm is really the movement of the vibration. The vibration of the planet's moving, Earth, everything, and so people are losing their mind. Right?
It's working.
Right? That's what's happening. They can't take it, can't keep up with it.
It's that zombie effect.
Yes. They always tell us the whole story. Like when I was a little girl, right? Like I know where we are now. We're the raising of the dead from the grave. But when we were young, when I was young, and they, I had to go to Sunday school. My parents didn't push us to church. Sunday school, we lived right next door. I had to go there and learn the basics. And my mind was, I don't want to be around when people start coming up out of the grave.
For real. Bite your neck.
Now I know what it is. I know exactly what it is.
Like the elder said a long time ago, make sure you got your turtlenecks and stuff like that. Make sure you got your turtleneck. Because when these Indians start biting your neck, and the blacks and Negroes or whatever like that, because they actually turn to the vampires because they lost their mind, you don't want to be the one to get your turtlenecks early. Peace and love to all the Moors worldwide. Just quick run back. Don't forget consecrated talisman. Don't forget consecrated talisman. Don't forget the Turk, Phil Pasquini. Don't forget Michelle Gibson. Don't forget Holy Quran, Moorish Science Temple, Moorish Holy Temple of Science. Don't forget Los Indios. Don't forget Moor's Order of the Round Table, civic lesson book. And of course, don't forget Who Are the Moors and every book possible on rvbaypublications.com. And everything that you can push and download and print and whatever, get it all. Get it all. Don't leave any stone unturned, because you will be sorry. Peace and love to all the Moors everywhere, anywhere that you're at. One love. Brother Yusuf, give thanks to you, Moor.
It's love. So I'm going to give thanks to the Moors in the chat. It's love to Canaan Moors in the platform. Give honors to the Prophet.
You already know. Of course, we'll do a closeout. Of course. Gotta do that. Give you something. And don't forget, January 4th, 2020, 10th year, 10th annual Noble Drew Ali Day celebration out here at Canaanland, 29 St. Denis Drive. We're going to be out here doing what we do, giving honors to the Prophet, giving supreme honors to the Prophet. We're going to have a couple performances. We got a couple lectures. Brother Dave, Brother Setenra. We got we're definitely going to have the eats going on. And we're also going to have some Moors from out of town out here and joining the festivities. So peace and love to all. You already know we're going to have something uploaded for you on that. And make sure you back some Moors, support some Moors, get your study on, get your mind right. Anybody you can put this information on, just drop a seed. You don't gotta, you know what I mean, try to have a garden and all that stuff, because half these people's minds are weeds and they would kill every seed that you plant in their mind. So don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. Just make sure that you keep yourself in tune with the universe. Keep yourself in tune with yourself. Oh, we got one more before we get out of here. Moore just sent one. Let's just close out with this before the music. Still, travelers and scientists are not wanting to pretend that these strange buildings were constructed by the same race now inhabiting the peninsula, or by their near ancestors. Regardless of Cogludo's assertion, that is not known who their builders were, and that the Indians themselves preserved no traditions on the subject. Unmindful, likewise, to these words of Lizana, that when the Spaniards came to this country, notwithstanding that some of the monuments appeared new, as if they had been built only 20 years, the Indians did not live in them, but used them as temples and sanctuaries, offering in them sacrifices, sometimes of men, women, and children, and that their construction dated back to a very high antiquity. The historiographer par excellence of Yucatan, Cogoludo, informs us that in his day, the middle of the 17th century, scarcely a little more than 100 years after the conquest, The memory of these adulterated traditions was already fading from the mind of the Aborigines. Of the people who first settled in this kingdom of Yucatan, he says, nor of their ancient history have I been able to find any more data than those I mention here. The books and other writings of the chroniclers and historians from the Spanish conquest to our times should therefore be considered well-nigh valueless, so far as the history of the primitive inhabitants of the country, the events that transpired in remote ages and ancient traditions. So these people know that it is not known who the ancient builders were, and that the Indians themselves preserved no traditions on the subject. You still want to be Indians? Go right ahead. But know that we are all Moors. Don't forget to get Anur Majid's book too. Islam, Moors, peace and love.
Man, I see the strongest and smartest men who've ever lived. I see all this potential. That's the swamp. God damn it, an entire generation pumping gas, waiting tables, slaves with white collars.
Marcus Garvey got my right, True Ali got my left side. Pulling for devil's hides with the valley of death stride. Blade dirty like it doesn't shower, tongue is the sword. Moorish master MC Moor, myself I'm Lord. Accent of Tony Martin and Kwame Ture. They putting Steve Coakley exposing the black roulette. Threatening Ivan Van Sertima with deportation to his own land he's in. So you know some Masons. I'm pulling strings to shut him up for saying Olmecs. Speaking the truth of those existing before Toltecs and Aztecs and Mayan. So-called blacks are the Hawaiian and the American and the free white man. Stop the blood clot crying. Irish nigga fighting a dancing monkey. Disgrace the race, slap a mumble rap chunky. Take your mask off, show you the future, give you nervous sweats. Listen to yourself singing about Maori and Percocets.
Advertising has us chasing cars and clothes. Working jobs we hate, so we buy shit we don't need.
I see y'all wearing skinny jeans and sagging and sports bra shirts, calling Mochi to bury them in Calgary far outskirts, too grizzly to bear. I'm fair falling off this frisbee, I swear. Never mind sight impaired, stay on my square. 7 and 4 quadrant ring. I'm on my knees, not praying. I'm strangling gin with Rudraksha beads. Some might say mala, some might call it a Buddhist chain. In times of war, everything is a weapon just the same as everything above has a below. Check the facts and stone. If you can find one, ask Pharaoh. What Orion and Sirius have to do with the plateau of Giza? Ancestors thought project place to place like Freezer. More scientists, Sufi, shut up with God believers. Make those with little faith become ancestral receivers. Signs and symbols, rhymes and signals. Either abandon or get your birthright like a retriever. Abandon or get your birthright like a retriever. No need to bring it back, you need no shepherd. Stop being a sheep, black, stop wasting effort. Stop letting traders chill, drop them off in deserts. I buzz at dinner, a sellout. Before I get the hell out, I listen to what Drew Ali taught, he didn't have to yell out. Ref, bring the bell out, Shango, the chicken heads out. Merge shaman stones and tiger eyes, help the spell out. Cool Bay, the reason El Shabazz and Ali fell out. Moors disgruntled and watching people with brows crumble to be exalted, but praise themselves never humble. Begging for props, what the segregation, but calling the cops, then calling them racist after someone gets shot or beat to a pulp or choked out. R.I.P. Their ancestors let their devil self haunt their dreams. Tortured forever and never have peace, never. So low, make their head hurt with biometric pressure.
No children of history, man. No purpose, no place. We have no Great War, no Great Depression. Our Great War is a spiritual war. Our Great Depression is our lives.
So it's gonna get you in. What? I'm rocking. Who says we ain't in the building? Who says we ain't into building?
We the Moorish master masons, architects for your children, rapping Friday 30s like Jason, without the killing. But we promote life, oh, it's all about the feeling. And we invoke life, yo, we them light beings. Though you might see him on the block getting his caution, might be talking to cops, giving them caution, occasionally wearing his fez when he's walking, see the turning heads, whispering gawking, but he's locked in and he's zoned out while we boxed in our own house.
Study the mystics, the adepts, the magi, wisdom of the ancients can all calcify us. Possible mission, free mental numbness, extract the substance with minds of darkness. Use the source, don't care what some purport, as we know by being told man knows not. Many before the floor, souls got born, placed in the devil's hands, rule in the seven lands. To dogma rituals, Negro spirituals, brainwash subliminal, keeps thinking to a minimal. They're still criminal, in a world digital so pitiful. Mental survival so critical, it's visible. Can you see past life as blocks? Hashtag zombies with waves of cyberpunk. No need for cell phone, this new saw palm. It's nothing for alarm, chips and forearm.
Wind, brass, and bass, such a beautiful serenade. Women feeding me grapes, I'm feeding the serenade. Whether the sky is clear or gray, great when you hear it fake, giving life to see. Drinking food I hear today. Show you the future in a glimpse. Then I always look to these homes like hallucinary pimps. Sun walked the desert, been more ever since I found God. Look back, used to see his prince. Forget being a prince, I'm a G. OD, grown man, no Jody, deny it, you don't know me. Don't make me tap into the old me. That's like a couple hundred years. Walk around town with a couple hundred peers and release the peace of fears. The sun gon' shine, so what tears? This young brother here just trying to get his third eye clear.
This deep, Moors don't sleep. Invest in your mind, body, and unleash. Real life rap, spitting over tracks. Conscious thinking and living a dead attack. This deep, Moors don't sleep. Invest in your mind, body, and unleash. Real life rap, spitting over tracks. Conscious thinking and living a dead attack.
So as the moon sets, the sun takes its place. It spoons on blocks, inspired spots, filled spaces. Real rats, who got kisses. Fire stain the corridors of demo faces. Game changers, rule benders, and no pretenders. Style benders, channel my vibe through the vibe and optic lenses. Send a message to our veterans. Soldiers up and get it in. We on the birds, we on merge, subliminal beings. Third eye seeing, still I participate unwilling.
They wanna break me, shake, break me. Follow with my name G, double O-M-G. It's when it's crazy for a minute that you think you could take me for a fool like a native to his land, being schooled by a foreign dude. You mistaken me, spiders on the roof, in the dark rooms. I've been saying you mistaken me. To better move for our market. Power pin is my tongue, to resistance to target. Revealing all lies and deceit on the market. Genocide, carry out in pockets, I knock it down, bulldozer. Baby to Goliath, it's an exposure. Some big heads moving and it's getting closer to your downfall. Round up for your soldiers.
Little homie, I was seeking a fortune, tired of misfortune. I just wanted a portion, everything that I never had, though I needed my portion. Blowing like porcelain, haters cracking the porcelain. Getting broke, tired of being broke. How we acquire hope is to keep the skillets of dope, just to keep us afloat. Might as deep as the boat, brain is a lethal weapon. We one need to below. When I speak up, I'm broke. Walk in the room with my aura feeling like heavy smoke. Feel like when the levee broke. Under my Louis Fitty, the semi-coat. Cause then we capture the cricket, boy, yeah, the joke. The cost of living, higher profits and private printing. These little girls are sunny blind just to pay the pushing. These little niggas sunny niggas just to build condition. It's like this thing can never end the bridge and the mission. I wanna free the world, but I'm one man. A couple ones like me, let me one plan. I wanna free the world, but I'm one man. A couple ones like me, one plan.